my
So
hunting
when she thinks
every
she's your
year,
friends, will
that
stand in
didn't
the back
mean
quicker
much. It was
than your true
wild
friends
and
will.
huge, stretched for miles and miles across rolling hills
I proved
until
that.
it finally merged with the back
Man,
of the
your
Rockies.
buddy just said,
We had
I
one
got your
small
back, I
patch of
got your
forest
back, and all
whose
of a sudden,
trails
like,
he and I knew
when
well,
something went
and
down
which my dad didn't like to go
to
far
where
from.
he was, and
He used to
oh,
joke
my
that
son,
we'd take the
you
wrong
shouldn't even
path
taken
one
off.
day
And
and come
that's
out from
why
the
come I got
woods to find
scar
10 years
on
had
my lip. I
passed
think it's like,
and we were in
can't see it
California.
now, but
But that year,
can you see
I
like
had
this?
been impatient and bored
I
with
think
our
it's
usual
down.
trails. I was supposed to go to college
You
that
can't really
fall,
know.
and I was
mustache is
anxious to
rocking
shake off
the
the parts of
shade,
my life
but
I saw
right
as
there, like a
childish.
blue scar right there, or right there. But anyways,
Start
all this
fresh
come
as a
over. I
man.
gave a
I was
bully over
picked up the new set
$100.
of trails that
Cool.
were further
I
into
beat
the
you, right?
woods.
$100
I'd
a
argue
lot
with my
for a
dad
bet.
Back,
until we wore
well,
down
and back then,
and
Bully
to
was
try
going to
them
take
out.
off.
Right from
But
the
I
start,
caught him right beyond
the
the
trip
bar.
was a disaster.
And my
It was
friends,
an
if you're
unusually hot
listening,
summer that
Mm.
year, and by the time we unloaded our gear from
okay,
my
Gerry,
dad's truck
that's YouTube
and
now,
started
not
on the
Facebook.
trail, I had already
Anyways,
sweat through my deodorant.
my friends,
About
so-called,
30 minutes
they
into the
supposed to be
first day,
there
I realized
to
there
help
was
me.
something
They
off
took
about
off.
the woods.
They see this big
They were
old boy,
totally
like
silent.
bigger than
Not
you.
even
He said,
birds were
Yeah.
singing.
like, man,
The
you can
only sounds were the
fire
wind
you
blowing
wash
through the
out the
trees and our own
Mount Pearl.
footsteps. I've never
Well,
before
And
or
this
since
guy,
seen
like,
the
was
woods
huge,
that
you
quiet.
know. I was like, guys, come on,
We
like,
didn't come
you got your
across
back
any
and all
animals
that.
that
You
day.
know, it's like, they
To
like,
tell
yeah,
the
we got your
truth,
back. And
I
when
tried to
buddy
hide
started
it from
wailing
my
on me,
dad,
he took off on
but
me.
it was creepy.
Well, just
We
the same,
camped in a
next
clearing
day,
by the
they
trail
all
I
had
had
broken
marked on our
windows.
map. By this
Yeah,
point,
I broke
I
out
was
all the
honestly
windows.
ready to call it quits. Between the heat and the strange silence in the woods, I didn't want to be out there anymore.
Oh, my son,
This
I was
trip
mad.
had been my
I can
idea,
imagine.
And that
I
was the
wanted my
boys
dad
and
to be the
supposed to
one to
be
call
there
it off.
for me. My
He didn't,
friends, it's all
and
called.
after a supper of ham and beans, we spent a sleepless night in the hot tent. It was around noon of the second day. We noticed the smell. We were making our way up the trail when it seemed like somebody flipped a
You know what I was
switch
going to do?
and turned the forest on its head. We were
Oh,
both hit
You want to
with
drink
a
your
wave of
house?
stench
yeah.
like rotting animals.
Had it right
By
up
the
just in
strength
like,
of the smell,
like that.
seemed very
What the
close
fuck
by.
am I doing? Because
At the
everything
same
I
time,
usually,
the silent woods
like,
were filled
I'm
with sounds
andexious, but
all around
my,
us. Birds were
I think
shouting
that's what you call
warnings
it.
like
Like,
an
yep.
alarm.
Yeah.
We stopped in
I
our
prefer my
tracks
right
and heard
more than my
something
left,
crashing
but I
quickly through
can
the
still
underbrush
use
to
my
our
left
right.
like I can use my
Turning,
right.
I saw a herd of
But
deer
my
running
dominant
at
hand
top
is
speed through the thick
my
bushes.
right.
My rifle was slung over my back, but even if I had it in my hands,
Not
I wouldn't have
mine.
been able to react in time.
I could
After
You
a
try.
shocked my
pause,
parents
my
when you
dad
said you was
spoke.
a lefty.
We need to turn back,
And she,
he
like,
said.
dad's like, oh my
Something's
god, I
frightening the
got a
animals.
lefty. That's what
Your
he
sister
said.
is, isn't it?
I nodded.
Yeah, my sister is.
Bears, although not common in our area,
My mom and
were
dad,
not
even
unheard of.
when Tracy's
I
younger,
remember 2
they
hunting
tried to
seasons
put
ago.
like
A couple of
a
hikers had been
mitt,
attacked
like
on
a
the other
hugging
side
mitt
of the state
on her left
by
hand,
what some
trying not
Oh,
people
to.
said
really?
was
Yeah,
a huge
and tried to
grizzly.
get her to a righty.
Even with our
No way.
rifles, we wouldn't necessarily be safe against a big bear. We made our way back up the trail,
Now
but even as
you
the sounds of
stay
the
up where
animals
you
quieted
good
down
now.
all around us,
Freaking
the
me out
smell
here, the
didn't
rolling
go
over
away.
the top.
On the contrary, it
So
seemed to get
anyway,
stronger and stronger all the time, until we were both covering our noses with our shirts and taking gasping breaths through our mouths.
hello, Ray.
There was a change in the atmosphere, too.
Hello.
Everything felt
He's in
heavy
new
and slow and
surroundings.
somehow charged. Once, when I was a boy,
No,
I
I'm gonna
struck
be a
a tree
dad.
not 200 feet away.
I'm gonna be a dad
This felt
again.
like that day. Like something was about to happen. We were about a day and a half's walk from our car, and even though we both wanted to get out of there as fast as possible, when night fell, we knew better than to try to
I'm
follow
gonna be a
strange
dad
trail
again.
in the dark. We made a camp by the trail. We didn't light a fire.
Here's
My
that
dad
one.
didn't say anything, but there was a tension in his
Holy
shoulders,
fuck.
and his head swiveled quickly at every sound. We were hunched
Thank
on a
you.
log, eating cold beans out of a tin, and wondering how we were going to get to sleep when we heard it. Down the path, further
Boys, I
than I
only
could
got
see
3
in the dark,
packs left.
there came a low groan. Immediately, Dad and I had our
I got
hands
3
on our
packs
guns.
left.
The stench somehow
That's
grew
what I
again.
got.
It was overwhelming now, and I swear I could feel it in the air around us, sitting thick and oily
That
on my
one.
skin. Another low groan, like
That
a
one.
man
I
sighing,
got that one.
and as I peered up the path, I saw
Wait a
a dark
second.
shape. It was low to the ground and big.
Wait a second.
It was waddling on all four, but something about its movements seemed unnatural.
Oh, that.
It looked the way a big man does when he crawls on his hands and knees. Like every movement is forced and stiff. My dad stepped between me and the path. Bill, he said, go into the woods and hide.
That should be
Don't
good.
come out. I'll take care of the bear. I'd like
Should
to
be
say
good
I told
for
my
a while.
dad I would never abandon him. I would at least like to say I tried to argue.
I took a full bag
Sometimes,
of one of
very
these.
late at night when I
Took a
can't
full
sleep,
bag.
I lie awake and think about what
What are
could
you
have
for?
been if I hadn't been a coward. But those thoughts belong to the night. They are only dreams. I was about 1,000 feet away from our campsite when I heard the shots. 1, 2, the night, practiced and controlled. I
Oh
didn't
my
stop.
God.
I was crying then, and I couldn't stop until I ran through the clearing on a small hill and tripped, rolling down into the underbrush. I stayed still down there, sobbing uncontrollably. I don't know how many shots my dad fired. I don't remember when the screaming started, or how long it lasted, only that it seemed to go on
I
forever.
will be tied up.
And it didn't sound like my dad, more like a woman.
That would be funny. Oh my
I didn't
God.
know how long
This would
after
be
the
a
screaming
jackass
stopped
video.
that I heard it.
That's like probably a 200-foot stretch. And him hung down. But instead of doing that, have him hung on gorilla tape.
Oh God!
And run through it naked. Oh my God. Oh man, that's like literally. Can you imagine run through that and everything like starts to stick out to you? Till you get to the 200 mark? Oh,
Yeah, the smiley face on your ass.
Stretching its body.
Till you get to the 200 mark, you would be able to move. Like keep them only probably like 4 feet apart. So when you run through, as soon as you take your breath, you bang, you enjoy the other one. Bang, you enjoy the other one. Oh my God. I say you have gorilla tape up all your eyes, in your nose, across your mouth, up
Oh
yours.
my God! I died.
Oh, geez. What a jackass movie that would be. That would make a good one.
Me. I don't know where they came from, but I knew they wanted to hurt me.
I never seen him do that. Wait,
I
did see him do one like that, but it's only like probably 50, no,
I live alone
10 feet long and 4 foot wide.
Yard.
They had, can you remember when the one they go with oil?
Mostly tall pines and
And
lots
they
of
had the tasers
the
on
street just
strings,
ends a
and
few
they're like
yards from
this.
my house.
And they had to crawl on their hands and knees.
All we got was an almost useless street lamp.
Oh, that
fucking
would be
died at that one.
Because the darkness of the woods creeped me out.
That was only
The dull
10
light
feet.
from the street
Can you
lamp
imagine
illuminates
200
a
feet
good
to all
portion
I
of my
wanted to
yard.
do?
But because
Oh
of the
my
angle,
jeez.
some
200
of the
feet being
trailers cast
tased.
shadows across it.
Oh
The
my
light
Just
jeez.
let it in.
I just curl up like beans and say, just send me
Almost completely covers the front yard. One of the
Yeah.
last benefits of the light. Honestly,
Or just
the
rip
orange
the
glow
fucking
and low
taser
hum
right
of
off
the
the
street
goddamn
lamp used to come
line.
with me. Now,
I use the
just
other
fills me
taser
with
and a
dread.
taser so you can strip
The
down
taser
with
and
it.
the
The day goes
taser.
out,
I
and
use the
can't see
taser and a
the
taser so I can strip down with it.
I was on my screened-in side porch, relaxing before going to bed. In the middle of my routine, scrolling through social media,
She's an
something at the edge
Indian
of the
or an
woods
angel?
caught my
Nope,
attention.
she is
I
an
wouldn't
angel,
say I saw
but
it
she
at
got
first.
it's like
was
she's
more like I
turning
felt
into
it. I put my
phoenix.
phone away and strained my eyes to try and make out what was making me feel so uneasy. It was
Phoenix
just at the edge of the
Mhm.
light,
Yeah.
as if I had caught it trying
I
to
know.
sneak out of the
Flames?
darkness
I'm gonna
beyond.
put flames around.
A shadow in the shape of a person. I didn't believe it at first.
That's right.
Why would I? It was just standing there, not moving, but I knew it was looking at me. It had no defining features, no eyes, no mouth, no hair. It was a perfect shadow, just standing at
What
the
the
edge of
fuck?
my yard,
Everybody's
like a
saying
person.
no eyes, no mouth,
I
no ear.
stared for what seemed like an
That seems like
eternity,
a garbage bag.
not sure that I was really seeing a shadow person in my yard.
This is like a fucking garbage bag.
I called out to it, asking what
Shove
it
a
was
garbage
doing.
bag over a person. No
I
eyes,
got no
no ear.
response. It didn't even move.
Oh my God, that's like what was it on Facebook and stuff? What was it? Gluten free, non-fat, non-dairy.
Yeah.
Here's a napkin.
The shadow.
Yeah.
It never moved.
So that
Oh my God, Amanda! If I can find it, I got to share it.
Yeah.
You ever watch the Sour Ass 22 Minutes?
Yeah,
Or
every
Gerry
now and then, yeah.
tell it? You know how funny it is? They make fun of one on their
That was
oh,
the
Jesus,
moment
no,
I
man.
began to panic.
Oh, I got it.
Called
I
out
got
to it again
Thanksgiving,
and again.
and you know it's like
Got no
the family
response.
bees here, and the woman
My
comes
stomach
in and she
I
throws
began to
the
get
turkey on the
I
table
stood
and
and walked off
walks
the
back.
porch.
Do you want white
I
meat?
took maybe 3 or 4 steps
And
towards it. When I
no,
was
the kid
overwhelmed
goes.
with fear.
I
began to
heard
sweat.
the animal
My
is
mouth dried
cruel or
Every
something.
hair on
I don't,
my
I
body
don't know
was
what I'm
stiff.
saying, but
I
you
tried
know,
to
it's
take
like the
another
way they
step,
fall.
but my body
Well, did it die
refused to move.
naturally and did it
Every
die?
primal
Did it
instinct I had
was it fed
was telling
well
me
and
to run.
stuff like that?
I
Yeah.
backed away,
And
never taking my
and
eyes off
she
of
just
it.
she just takes the
After I
turkey,
got inside the house,
goes over
I
the window
ran
with
to
the
the
George.
pantry to find my strongest flashlight.
That's
Side door of the house,
And
the kitchen,
he's like,
so it wasn't too
but
much of a
the
stretch.
guy he's like,
Before going
now,
back
how about a
outside,
slice of bread?
You ruined this for me.
Yeah, how about a slice of bread?
I
Oh
walked
my
back onto the
jeez.
porch, turned on
We've
the
been simply
flashlight,
homestead.
beamed it at
Where
the
are you at,
shadow.
Gerry? I'm in a new
My skin
place.
crawled as the light washed over the shadow and didn't go away.
Can you guys guess where I'm
The
at?
shadow was opaque. I could almost see through it when the light was directly on
Can you
it.
guys guess where I'm at?
It was pure darkness, given shape. Not knowing what to do,
Woo,
I backed
man.
inside. Who
What?
would I call about this? They'd never believe me. I pulled a chair to the window of my living room and watched the
Oh
shadow.
man, oh
I
man.
don't know when I fell asleep, but it was sometime before sunrise.
Now I know
The next
what you
morning,
look like.
I woke up to the sun hitting me in the face. I jumped up, checked the time. 7:36
See,
a.m.
it takes a
The feeling
like
of uneasiness
hard
was
sorry
gone.
to draw that
But I
shit
had to be
because
sure.
if I try
I
to
looked
draw
out the
that,
window and
like I
almost
could picture
collapsed
it
from relief.
in front of
The
me,
shadow was
but
gone.
the
I ran through the
fucking
previous night's
two
events over
things
and over in
won't
my head.
connect. Like
Maybe I had dreamed
I
of
can
the whole
picture
thing.
what needs to be done and how it
Either
go,
that,
but
or I was going insane.
when I draws it, and I'm actually like,
It took
I'm like,
almost an
what
hour
the
to build
fuck?
up
That
my
looks like
courage
a
to walk
circle. That
outside
looks
to
like a
inspect the spot
goddamn.
where the shadow stood.
God knows
What
what
I
it is.
saw made me run cold. There were 2 imprints in the grass, as if something had been standing in the same spot for hours. I felt sick to my stomach. There really was something in my yard last night. I backed away from the spot, never taking my eyes off the footprints. It might have been there still, but was invisible, waiting to get me. But if that were true, why didn't I feel the uneasiness I felt from last night? Did that even have anything to do with the shadow? I prayed it wouldn't be back to answer these questions. The rest of the day went by normally. It
Oh,
was
look,
my
pinch
day
your
off,
poplar.
so I just lounged around watching TV.
Oh,
I
man,
went
you're about
grocery
to.
shopping.
You're
I don't really remember much of the
Jeez, I
day.
just realized, hey, look at that over that fire.
I
You can
just
see
remember
binks up
being
on her.
anxious about nightfall, hoping it wouldn't
Yeah.
come back.
Never
Man,
mind.
what I would give to
It's
get
Ah,
just
about
that
that.
feeling instead of the absolute dread I
Scooching
feel
it.
now.
Okay, never mind.
Hey, push.
Nightfall came, and I did my best to
You
keep my
go,
mind
fucking
occupied.
pupils.
I cooked dinner,
No, push, I didn't
turned
see
on one of my favorite
LSD,
comedies.
and there's no, I didn't see the dragons in the
I began to
kitchen.
feel a little bit
I
better.
died when I
It
watched
was
it. I
already
died
past
when
the
I
time
shared
the
that on
shadow
Facebook.
appeared
When I
in the
seen that, and the
went
cat's
outside,
eyes like this. Pupil.
pulled out my
No,
phone
I
and
didn't
checked
see
the time
that.
before the
But I
feeling
seen
came
the.
back.
But I see. What was it she said? I
I
didn't
looked
see your
up,
LSD,
and
but I
there
seen
was,
your. I
a few
seen
feet closer and more
the
defined.
dragons in the
I
kitchen.
didn't have the strength to
Oh
bark
my
this time.
jeez.
A whimper forced its way out of my mouth, and I scanned the rest of the tree line. That's when I spotted the other one. I was standing just outside one of the shadows made by the tree line closer to the road.
Yeah, I have a few
It
more.
was standing in the same pose at first, arms just hanging to its side, but it
Oh,
was facing
say.
my direction. I screamed and jumped back, falling over a chair. Before I realized it, I was yelling anger again, and I walked out onto the stoop. I looked on the ground for something to throw and spotted a small rock by my step. Without thinking, I grabbed it
Happy
and flung it at the
Easter,
first
everybody.
shadow.
Happy
The rock hit the
Easter.
shadow right in the chest and fell to the ground. But there was no sound when it connected. It was as if it hit nothing. The
Oh,
shadow
God
didn't
love ya. Thanks for watching,
called out
guys.
again, asking them why they were here. There was no
Guys,
reply.
can you guess where we're at?
I don't don't know what I expected.
You notice we're not
That's
my
when I
home.
realized there were no sounds.
My home
No
don't look like
crickets,
that in the
no
background.
birds, no
It will.
sounds at all.
Oh, it
Just
will.
the humming of the
Sooner but
street.
later.
I moved
But,
from the first shadow
well,
to
I
the
should say
second.
later than sooner.
The unease
Because
rising the
that
more I looked
rounds
at
it up. Because it always takes longer. Because,
anything.
oh,
They just
Lord, I got
stood
nice
there,
bit stuff. I got nice bit stuff ordered on.
I retreated to the
Oh
porch.
yeah, that's what you were going to show me.
Until it was done.
I can't do it.
Still
Yeah.
wouldn't move.
I do it after.
What were these
Before we
things?
go.
Why did they fill me with so much
Nope.
dread? I thought again about who I could tell about them that wouldn't send
Nope.
me to
We're
a
in somewhere else.
I don't really have any friends, and my family lives hours away. I had never felt so alone as I did in that 5 minutes. After finishing my cig, I went back inside and posted up
We're
beside
somewhere
the window
else.
again. I could barely see
That
the
we
sight
got
of
free
the
internet.
As long as it didn't move, it would be fine. Hours went by, and they never moved. But the uneasiness.
I'm gonna give you a hint.
Once again,
Mount Pearl.
it crept up on me, and before I knew it, I was waking up.
Dude,
It was
Jesus, my
8:42
sisters.
a.m. I was late for work. I called my manager and apologized.
These are my sisters. There'd be two big old joint heads, one right here, one right here, and they slobbering on my shoulders. Oh, they will. Big old dogs, boy, son. Jesus loves me.
After a small back and forth,
You.
she agreed. I needed time
Definitely
to
not
either
my
get this thing
sisters, because
sorted
if
out
that was at my
or get out
sisters,
of Dodge. I
man,
spent the
it'd
day
be.
trying to come up with
If I was at my sisters, you'll know. I'd have a big old. What is it? She got pit bull.
So
Rock.
stupid.
What?
Boxer.
But what was
She
the
got a
plan
big old
after that?
boxer,
I couldn't
one
even
right
get
here,
through them
and she got
because of
two
the feeling
boxers.
they gave me.
One right here, and
I
she got a
thought
little
maybe
tiny
I
Shih
could
Tzu
but I
in
didn't
the
have
middle.
money or time.
And believe it or
I
not,
just
but
reserved
that little
myself
tiny
for
Shih Tzu
reconnaissance for the
controls him two big
night.
old
After that, I'd
boxers.
see where things went. Waiting for nightfall
Yeah.
was awful.
That's the
I
way
couldn't
she
eat.
goes, boys.
I
That's
tried
the
to
way
take
she
a nap
goes.
because I was
Hey,
exhausted
welcome
from
to
barely
Good
sleeping
Burger.
the previous
Home of
2
the dirt.
nights.
Welcome
But
to
every
Dirty
time I
Burger.
started to drift off,
Home of the
I would
Dirty
think about
Burger.
the
May I
shadows
take your
consuming
order?
me and jump away.
Oh,
I couldn't do anything but sit and wait until it got dark. The hours dragged on.
oh
That day
man.
seemed like an eternity of waiting. Finally, night came.
Hi
I
guys,
walked off the
welcome
porch and waited with
everybody.
my phone in hand,
Welcome in chat.
periodically checking the time.
You guys are
The
awesome.
usual
A
sounds
lot
of
better
nature
than
were there.
Facebook chat.
Crickets, cicadas.
Facebook
Lynch
chat.
talking to us.
Facebook
Held out
chat is
some
fucking
tiny bit of hope
garbage.
that maybe the shadows wouldn't show. Then,
You fucking
at
young
9:07
man.
p.m., the sound stopped, and all I could hear was
Cheers,
the hum
everybody.
of the street.
Cheers.
My stomach dropped
Ooh.
so bad.
Take
I
that.
felt physically sick. I already knew what that meant, but I looked up and the first shadow had
Oh,
moved
Kevin.
closer to my house.
Guess what we
The
got,
second
Kevin?
half
Or
distance.
yeah.
I
Guess
scaled
what
the
we
yard
got?
and spotted 2 more. One on the opposite side of the yard.
Just take a
as the
guess what I
second
got,
shadow,
Kevin.
and the other in the
It cost
middle
me
of the street.
$27.
Again, they were easier to make out than the previous 2 nights. They were more corporeal, darker than before.
It has to do with something that you like.
Shadows near them
And he likes it a
If
lot.
anything, stood out. I walked to the door and stuck out my torso. The air felt heavy, like it was made of pure malice.
Yeah,
I began sweating and felt faint.
I'll show you.
I opened the camera
I'll show
on my
you right
phone
now.
and aimed it at the first shadow, who was the closest one.
We got
at probably only
2 of
12
them.
feet from my door.
Well, one is
I
gone,
struggled to keep my hands steady
but we
enough
got
for
2 of
the camera to
them.
focus
One is
on the low
sealed, the
light.
other one is gone.
After what seemed like forever, it focused, and I snapped a few pictures. Once I got those, I backed to
And
the porch and took a moment to
this
catch
is
my
mine.
breath. I looked back
I
at
brought
the
4, but I got
shadows,
1 pack
looking
on
for any
already.
type of change.
I got 1 pack on.
Nothing.
It's like 40 milligrams. So,
And frustrated.
but I looked at
I
buddy,
opened the
buddy's
pictures
like,
I had taken,
that's more than
and of
enough.
course,
Like,
they weren't clear enough
to get
even
you
make
high.
anything out. I had to try
I got
again.
3 packs
But
of
every
him.
fiber in me was screaming for me not to.
3
It took me a
packs.
few minutes to hype myself up enough to
I
give
had
myself more
4.
day.
4 packs of these. 4 packs of these is $27 and change. I should say 27, but $27 for 4 packs of them, because they're like $6.99 plus your taxes.
I was being haunted by shadows. As I pressed the
Oh,
button,
excuse me. Oh my
the street
God.
lamp flickered. It was only for half a second. but it ruined the picture. All I got was
Kevin,
darkness.
do you know where I
cursed
can
my
get?
luck,
Do you know
and
where
the
I
lamp
can get
flickered 2 more
these?
times as I
Say
was
for
trying to get
less
back to
money
the
than
camera.
this.
I looked up, and what I saw caused me to scream, drop my phone, and fall onto the porch in one motion. The shadows had moved. Very slightly, but they had moved. The first looked as if it had just finished taking a step forward.
They're not even
The
open.
second
Like,
and third were in the middle of taking a step. The fourth seemed to be slightly hunched over, like it was getting ready to sprint. I got off the floor with tears in my eyes and realized my phone was outside. I bolted to the door without thinking, burst out onto the stoop. The phone was lying on the ground at the base of the bottom of the step. I reached for it, and the lamp flickered again. A wave of fear hit me, and I threw up before looking towards the shadows.
you're gonna get
The
Chinese
first lifted
eyes.
its foot. The
I got
second
that
and third
already.
finished their step, and the
I got
fourth
more
was
than
hunched
Chinese
further.
eyes already.
My body seemed to move on
I
its
just
own
walked
as
in
the
the.
I left my
I just
phone,
walked in the fucking
ran inside my
hallway, and
house
you know,
locked
like
the
when
door.
you
I
know, it's
tied
like on
my
the
lights on the
cartoons,
lamp.
like the hallway keeps going,
Shadows
stretching like really
No,
far.
if they could do that, they
That's
would have
like I
done it in the
was.
first place.
Oh
Most
man,
likely the bulb was going out. I
it
needed
feels
to call
good
the electric
though.
company. I reached in my
Yeah,
pocket for my
man.
phone and screamed in frustration when I realized it wasn't there. The
Oh,
lamp flickered
fuck.
2 more times. I began feeling lightheaded, my vision blurred. I
What?
leaned against the refrigerator to steady myself.
I can't.
But it
Manda?
wasn't enough.
What did I say?
My last memory from that
Butter?
night was falling to the
Saturn.
floor.
Cheaper and
When I
better.
woke up, I was still on the
Cheaper
floor.
and better.
Sunlight poured through the window.
No, what did I say? The
I
first
struggled to get up. I
Saturn
felt weak.
Saturn.
I didn't
Baker.
eat the day before, and I
Saturn
barely slept in
Bakery.
days.
Where's
I
that
finally
to,
got
Kevin?
up and looked at my stove for the time. 11:48 a.m.
Where's that to, Kevin?
Wow.
Where's
It was
to?
almost
What I?
noon. I stumbled out onto the porch and winced as the full brightness of the sun hit me. I walked out of the door to the stoop and picked up my phone. It was busted. I sat on the step and cried. These things were going to get me. I knew it. I ran through my options.
Continue.
I could just up and move.
St. John's.
I could maybe stay at my parents' for a night or
Do you
two.
know where in town?
Eventually, I'd have to come back home.
I should be
How many
closed if that's
shadows
the
would be
place
here
that
then?
me and you was in.
I decided I was going to fight them.
Wait now.
This
No, it
was
wouldn't
my
be.
home.
'Cause that was
As long
just
as there was light touching them,
DLC shop.
they
Was it?
wouldn't move. I could just buy
Don't
a
say
bow
where-
and
don't
take
say
them
where.
out from the porch.
No.
I hadn't
That was
used
just a
one since I was a
TLC.
kid, but I was pretty
TLC.
decent
That was
back then,
THC.
so
That was just
I had a good
THC.
feeling. First thing I needed to do was get that light replaced, though.
It's
I drove
not
downtown
on
to the
a
electric
what?
company
It's not a
and
physical
told them the light was
Physical
out
place.
and it needed to be fixed as soon as possible. They told me it would be later
that
that
mean?
afternoon, but it would be fixed.
What does
before
mean
dark.
it's not a
I thanked
physical
them
place?
and drove immediately to the
Maybe
nearest
anything?
sporting goods store.
Or something.
Once there,
Maybe
I asked
a
an employee
nickname or
to show
something?
me the boat.
What is it?
I was a little hurt at some of the prices of these things.
They deliver.
I finally
Oh,
settled
geez.
on one.
Oh,
my price
geez.
range was
They
about
deliver.
2
What the
arrows.
fuck?
On the way home, I
How
stopped
much
by
would
a
you pay
drive-thru.
4 bags?
I didn't eat much. When I got
How
home,
much did 4
I began
bags
putting
cost
the
me?
arrows together. and
Well, I told you
practicing
it's 4
drawing the
bags
bow.
of that is
I felt pretty
$27.
confident in my abilities, even though it made me sore. At about 4 in the afternoon, the repair truck finally came, and I walked out to the guy in
Oh,
the
okay.
street,
It's not a
He told
store that
me I
you go
looked
in.
sick,
They deliver.
which I laughed off
Uh-huh.
as having a week off of partying.
Oh,
way too
Dan
hard.
Clark. God
We
love
had
you.
a laugh, and he went to work.
Hey,
Once he
Dan,
was
you
done,
woman that
we
was
had
dropped
made some more
off that
small talk,
that
and he asked
gift
me if I was
after.
ready for the big storm that was coming through.
She's supposed to
My
have a
heart
birthday
dropped,
gift.
and I told
Must be a
him I
clever
didn't even know
birthday.
it was coming.
Must be a clever
He
birthday
pointed
gift.
up, and the sky was extremely overcast, and I cursed myself as I realized that it had been all
I
day.
know it did.
I thanked him, and he left. I hauled
I'm
back
doing
to the
good,
sporting
damn you,
goods store.
buddy.
I ran to the hunting section and bought the brightest battery-operated spotlight and headlamp they had. Between the bow and these, I had almost wiped out my account, but I wasn't going to take the chance of
Ooh,
these
okay,
things getting
Kevin.
I could always make my money back. As I walked out of the store, the first few raindrops began falling.
Dan, I'm after
By the
taking
time I
4
got home,
gummies
the
already.
storm was in full swing. The wind was terrible, whipping the rain sideways so hard it stung. In the short distance from my car to my house, I was completely soaked.
Okay,
Once
Dan, me
inside,
buddy.
I grabbed my flashlight.
Dan, I won't be on for a while, so
If things got bad and they got into my house,
I won't be on
could
for
turn
a
it
while,
on,
so
if not, stop
everything
them
will be
outright.
going back on normal
I set up the
Monday.
spotlight in the living room
So,
just in case the flashlight didn't stop them.
Monday
All I
I'll
could
be
do after
on
that
4.
was wait.
No,
So there I sat
4:30
on the
from
porch,
on. I'll
waiting
be
for them
on.
to show. I was wearing the headlamp. I couldn't take any chances. It was 10:52 p.m. and they had yet to make an
These
appearance.
ones are way
Maybe
stronger.
they didn't like the rain either, I thought. There had been a few lightning strikes in the last hour, and they seemed to
That's
get
not-
closer.
I'm hoping
They
that's
finally
weed in
showed up. I
it.
could feel them.
Oh,
The pressure,
holy
the
God.
dread. It was worse than ever. I looked out into the yard and spotted them. The first was only
Like the
10
cookies
feet away
I
now.
used to get from
Four,
the
not far from it.
rear.
Approaching from the
Holy
side, 2
crap.
and 3 were 20 feet away,
Amanda,
as if they were in no hurry.
250
I scanned
grams
the rest of the
each
yard and
cookie.
spotted 4 more. 2
Holy
were at the edge
jeez.
of the tree line,
If I eat a bag of cookies like that,
and the last was standing where the number
holy
4
fuck,
originally
man,
stood.
I'll be going.
There were 8 of them. I
I'll
didn't
fucking
expect this,
fly.
but there was nothing I could do about it. I grabbed the bow and walked to the door of the porch. It took everything to convince me to open it. Lightning struck, and that got me moving. In one swift motion,
I
I
eat
kicked
2
open
at
the
once.
door and drew my bow.
Kevin eats
I aimed it
2
for the
at
first shadow
once.
and shot the arrow. I
Holy
missed.
shit. That's
Of course I
500
missed. I hadn't
milligrams.
shot one of these things in almost 20 years. I was an idiot for thinking I could just go full Rambo on these things. The thunder
500
finally hit
milligrams.
and rumbled my
Holy
bones.
crap.
It was
And we
deafening.
got what? All
I
together
shook
in
it off
bag?
and drew
4
another arrow.
bags, like
I took a deep breath and aimed, trying to compose myself.
60.
I shot the arrow,
Shit.
and it hit the shadow in the hip area. It doesn't even react. The pressure grew. My head started hurting, and I felt nauseous. Lightning struck again, and my worst fear happened. The street lamp goes out. I fell back a few steps in the darkness and reached to turn on the headlamp, but didn't manage to before the light came back on. The light was only out for 2, maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity.
You be
It came back
stoned,
on as
or
the
you
thunder
be stoned the
clapped
next
so hard,
day.
the
Holy
windows
shit.
of my house
I
rattled.
say you will.
I quickly assessed the situation.
But
Shadow
those
1 pulled out the
gummies,
arrow and was holding it to its
those
side.
gummies, it
2
takes
and
4
3 were
hours.
now facing 1.
It's kicked in
4
now
looked like
because
it was in
I
a
took
mad
them.
sprint to the door.
I
Only
took
about 8
I
feet
took
away
4
now.
gummies.
5 and 6
When did
were
I
now
take-
hunched
when did
over
I
while
take
they
4
were about to
gummies?
start running.
I
7
took
had
4
moved,
gummies 9
and
o'clock.
8 had only taken a step or 2. I
So
steeled myself
9,
and decided 4 was
10,
the most
11,
imminent threat. I knocked
12
an arrow,
years.
opened the door,
It takes 4 hours
towards
for
torso.
full effect.
I shot the arrow and
So,
got it
yeah,
right in the neck.
It's
The shadow didn't react.
what picture? Oh,
but
I
pressure
got
grew.
a picture frame.
I felt something on my lip and reached
Stay
up to
up,
feel it.
freaking me
I
out.
pulled my hand back and my fingertips
That's the
were
only
covered
one.
in
You
a red
taking you, Tony?
substance.
I guess the
I had a nosebleed.
what do you call
The
that?
pressure was so
Burner?
great, it caused
No,
my nose to bleed. Wow.
The dollar store
There
is
was
in
no
a.
time to worry
You go
about
to the dollar
that.
store and you
I
get some
knocked
into
another arrow
the.
and took aim at 4 again.
Oh my god! I'm so
Lightning
fried
flashed
now.
and I shot the arrow.
What's
causing
wrong?
me to miss horribly.
Okay, never mind. Correct. Correct. Dave. I go. I go. I goes up to the dollar store and I was in first oil,
I immediately
second
turned on my
third.
headlamp and looked at 4.
Is in the fourth oil. Is in the fourth oil. Crash. Crash.
Well,
And when you get in the crash, measuring tape. That's what I'm trying to talk. It's a craft measure tape. He's like 3 feet long.
I knocked another arrow.
You're feeling it.
Well, or you
Craft
could get a piece
measure
of
tape.
paper and trace it around.
I looked and caught 7
Yeah.
frozen times through my screen.
Fold it up and bring it out to the mall, and you're like, oh, let me fold, unfold my little big piece of paper.
Little big piece of paper.
You're going up to a picture, picture. You're going up to a picture frame. Oh, that's the right size. Oh, yeah. Okay, here it is. Smash. Probably the last one there.
Slammed into the door. Only a second was 4. I turned to see it, pressed against the glass, like a kid looking in a
I
candy
know.
store.
I'm obsessed with the
Even though there
fucking
was no
thing.
facial features,
He's like,
everywhere it was smiling
I don't care. I'm getting.
Lightning flashed, and I saw the rest of them were crowded
Get
around,
some
not
more
too far
cheese.
behind.
I don't
I
want
back
more
into the
cheese.
kitchen and turned on the flashlight.
No,
Thunder boomed,
Jesus.
shaking the house again.
Okay.
The light
You have a
illuminated the entire
piece.
kitchen in
Hold on.
soft
We're not
light.
looking for
I heard the hook latch ripped from the doorway outside. They were on the
Oh
porch.
my jeez.
For some reason, I expected to hear footsteps, but there were none. They started banging on the kitchen door and windows next to it. The door handle started turning slowly. My heart stopped. I was in such a hurry to turn on the flashlight. I didn't lock the door.
Holy.
I ran over and was reaching for the lock.
Oh my God, Amanda.
Exploded.
Okay,
That's beyond.
The kitchen door flew open. I
What?
could see at least 5 of them
I
gathered
wouldn't
behind
mind
the door.
trying the blue
They
bag.
weren't coming in or moving, which was promising. The flashlight
Yeah.
was doing its job. I
I got-
relaxed a bit,
I got
but
the
only
little
for a
bit of
moment.
munchies.
The door was about 5 feet away. Targets.
Oh
I
my
knocked
Hey,
God.
you have a snack. Hey,
Shot the arrow
Yeah.
right at me.
Yeah.
I missed,
What
but one of the
country is
shadows behind me.
stacked with
I'll
junk?
take it, I thought. I was reaching for another arrow when something
Mm.
flew through the broken window and knocked the flashlight over. The light was now pointed down
Oh
the
my
hallway,
God.
away from
Nom,
the door,
nom,
causing
nom, nom.
darkness behind it. I looked to see what happened and saw one of my arrows lying next to the flashlight. I looked up in terror and caught Cor in the process of crossing
I got the
threshold of my
munchies.
door. Instinctively, I turned and ran to
Yeah.
the living room.
Means you
Should be
have to
okay
eat
in
more
there,
gummies.
I thought. They had to
If
get
you
past
have
the
the
flashlight
munchies.
blasting down the hallway to get to me. I walked to the couch where I left the
What?
bulk of my arrows. I grabbed them and shoved them into the quiver
I'm
as the
s-
lightning struck again.
I'm so
I
fucking
stopped what I
stoned
was
right
doing
now.
because something outside had caught
I'm
my
so
eye.
fucking stoned right now.
Thunder
I know.
clapped, and I looked out the window. I didn't have time to look out. I
Holy
heard the
fuck.
distinctive click of a button,
Woo.
and the light in the hallway went out. I whipped around and saw one of their hands.
I
on the
can't read
threshold
what
of
he
the doorway
said.
of the living room. Without shifting my gaze, I
Is
walked
it-
to the spotlight,
is it-
crouched down, and pressed the button to turn it on.
Oh man, oh man.
In a panic, I looked down at it. I quickly looked
Uh,
back, and one of their heads was peering around
Kevin.
the corner. It felt like it was mocking me. I reached down to pick up the light.
What?
and immediately
Why is
realized
chips
my
around?
mistake. I didn't buy
What is
batteries.
chips got? How come chips gotta be round?
True fear.
How come they can't be triangle?
Because I didn't buy batteries for a battery-operated spotlight. Honestly, I probably deserved it for that. No, I was getting out of here, I thought. I drew the bow and fired an arrow at the same shadow's head. I missed, but the arrow lodged itself in the hand and stuck into the wood of the door frame. That would help me buy a little time. I shot another arrow and back to the front door of the house. I fumbled to
How
find
come
the
chips
lock
don't
with
be
my
of
free
sorted
hand.
shapes?
Without
How
thinking,
come they all gotta be round? Like,
when I looked back up, two more
that's
heads
freaking
were
me
peering
out.
around the corner at me. I finally got the door unlocked.
Freaking
and
me out,
opened
man.
it, never taking my eyes off the shadows in the hallway. I got the door open a little bit and managed to squeeze through without turning around. I took a deep breath and turned to run, closing the door behind me. I was about to run down the steps when the lightning flashed, and I stopped cold. In my front yard stood 13 shadows.
Yeah, no.
I couldn't get a good count
It's worth it.
initially, but I started scanning the yard with my headlamp, and I counted them all quickly. 13.
Anything heavy like that on my
Have they
stomach
been
right
there
now?
the entire time? I never thought of the possibility that there would be more than what
Well, I
was
haven't
on my
counted
side of
yet,
the yard.
so.
I didn't have time to think of a plan. The door behind me started opening. I dropped the bow and turned around to grab the doorknob to keep it closed while turning
Yeah,
my
don't
head to
forget
try to keep
what
some
I'm not
light
to
on the
drink
shadows
them
behind
when
me.
you.
They were
Oh,
strong.
wow.
It took everything I had to keep them from ripping the door from my hands. The shadows in my yard were steadily creeping closer because I couldn't keep the light off of them for more than a second or two. I could feel my nose
You don't like that,
getting worse.
No.
My head was bothering me. I felt nauseous, and I was
Kevin
losing
said,
the door suddenly ripped from my
If
hands,
you-
and I stumbled back. My balance
can you
broke
write in
off.
all
I
caps?
fell down the steps and landed hard on my
Thank
back.
you.
I couldn't breathe.
God love
for a
ya.
moment. I looked around and screamed.
See?
They were all
That's why I
closing
can't
in.
read the stuff
If I
he
had
writes
ran
down.
as soon
He
as I
writes
got
very
outside,
small.
I probably could have found an exit.
You wouldn't cap. See, now I haven't got to lean
I
in.
turned back to the house.
Hey,
and
Jerry,
there was
have
a
you
shadow
seen
halfway down
any
the
of my
steps.
new
I looked
videos?
around again.
I
They were closer.
put a
I
nice
looked back to the
few
steps,
on the
and
last
shadow
week.
was
Ooh, I
reaching
never.
forward. I closed my eyes. This was it. No matter
No,
what
I
I
never.
did, one of them would get me. The attack never came. I was too scared to open my eyes.
A lot of
I just lay on the
YouTubers.
ground for what seemed
I'm
like
gonna
forever.
tell you,
And
Kevin.
then I heard it.
So many
A low
YouTubers
hum.
are complaining
I opened my
about
eyes and
this.
started to cry. The street light was back on.
I got
My
my
house lights were on.
unsubscribe to you.
I had power
I
again.
get the bell
The rain
notification
was beginning
push,
to
and I
slack
got
off. The
I
shadow
got the bell
directly over me
notification
froze.
pushed,
Its hand
and I
only
got
inches from
all.
my face.
But I come
I
in not
scooted
get no
back and stood.
notifications from you.
I could feel the hatred coming from this thing.
Check
I
your
looked at my
settings
house.
because
There
you
were
might have
6
to
in my
turn it
living
off.
room. The 13 in my
And that's a
front
lot of
yard were standing in a
YouTubers,
weak
like
circle around where I
like
fell.
Amanda. Like
Like they were
seriously,
just
a
going
lot
to
of
watch this one
YouTubers
get me.
is
I
complaining
felt
about
slightly
this.
relieved,
Like
even
they're
though the
not
pressure
like
and the dread was
get
still
your
weighing on
do
me.
not get
I
notifications
decided I
because
was
they're
going to stay
other
somewhere else
YouTube
tonight,
fans and not post.
anywhere else.
Like when they
I
post
reached
this,
in my
you're not
pocket for
getting a
my keys,
notification.
and of course they weren't there. I'm pretty sure I left them in my bedroom. Awesome. I managed to squeeze past the circle of shadows and walk around the house since I wasn't making it near the front
But
door.
just check
I looked at the number they
just
did
check
to my
your
screen
connections
around
and
the
check your
porch,
settings,
and
me
the
old
shiver
buddy.
ran down my spine. What would have happened if they had caught me?
Trust me, I would have
Walking back
watched
to
the
my
video
bedroom,
if
I
I
felt
knew
good.
you, if I had a
I won.
notification.
I'm definitely moving out of here
She's
tomorrow,
proof.
I thought.
She
It's a
is
small
proof.
price
Here,
to
I
pay.
check along with
Walking past the
notifications
doorway
what
into
I
the
get.
living room, I looked at them,
And she
frozen,
seen,
trying
not
to
seen,
get
but
out the
she
door
literally
quickly.
heard,
In my rush, I
including
clipped the
that,
door frame
because
of
it's
the living
attached to
room with
my,
the hammer,
And
knocking it off
he's the
my
one that
Yes.
was playing the
I
guitar.
didn't stop
Yeah.
to pick
There
it
we
up.
go. So,
I didn't have
because
to.
you were the one
I
that, yeah,
had
he
to
showed
get out of
me
there.
when I
As
was
I
out.
walked into the
Because you were
bedroom,
like,
I
we
reached to
sat
turn
down
the
and
light,
watched it.
and it made me
Exactly.
realize something was wrong.
Exactly.
The light switch
See
was
what I
off.
mean? She knows
That
what she's
wasn't
talking
right.
about.
I had intentionally left every
Yeah.
light on in the house
But
early.
I'm not getting no
Before I could even
notifications like
react,
what
something
you're
ice cold
putting
grabbed
on
my
me over
waist,
there.
and I was flung to the darkness on the other side of the room.
If I
I
had
tried to stand,
notifications,
but I was pushed onto the
you
floor.
see, I like
My
every
wrists
video, but
started to burn. It was so cold.
I don't see no
Screaming, I
notifications,
turned
so I
around
don't
to
think
swing
you're
at
on
my
live
assailant. I connected
or
with nothing,
on
and a pain
doing any
shot up my
YouTube
arm.
videos.
My throat went cold,
But
and I
I'll
was
go
lifted
on
off of
and
the
I'll
ground
watch
and
I'll
slammed
watch
into
your
the wall.
videos, Kevin.
I couldn't breathe. I kicked my
I'll
legs,
watch your
trying to
videos,
force
me
the
old
shadow
buddy.
to loosen its grip, but had no luck. I began to lash out, trying to get it. I only
Ooh,
succeeded
where
in
was
hurting
you out
myself.
to?
It felt like I was
Where
hitting a
was you
solid
to?
wall. Finally, a last-ditch effort. I reached in my pocket and pulled out a lighter. I tried to light it, but I was losing consciousness. It finally catches, and the small flame illuminated the darkness around me and the shadow. It stopped. Its grip around me. I tried to move as slowly as possible, so as to not put out the flame. I reached up with my left hand to grab the shadow's forearm. Slowly, I started to try and pull its hand off of me. The flame flickered as I exhaled, and tried not to panic. It stayed lit. I was good. The hand started to come off me as I pulled at the forearm. I felt its fingertips on the back of my neck lift ever so slightly, and the hand came off suddenly. The
April,
motion caused my entire
May,
weight to shift
June,
and the flame to go out. My hand
July.
slammed into the wall before I had a chance to
Is
try
that
and
July?
relight the lighter.
August?
The right hand closed around me again.
August, September, October, November, December.
So cold.
Ooh.
The shadow slammed me into the wall again, and I dropped the lighter. And my
How
head
about
went
this on
pitch dark.
Christmas?
My vision was fading. I struggled against it, but it was really like a small person fighting off a grown man. My head hit the wall again, on a stud this time.
I gotta go use bathroom
The
again.
back of my head. I get hit again.
She's here to talk to
One
you,
more will be it.
but every once in
But
a
I was
while,
okay with it.
I
Going
should say
didn't
that.
seem so bad.
But she's here to talk to
The
you.
shadow pulled back,
Yeah.
and
Keep it
feels like
PG.
it knows this will be the last hit of love. It paused and seemed to be savoring the moment.
I'm
I
done. She
smiled,
jumped up on your
and a
chair.
small chuckle escaped me, using every last bit of energy I had. Who would have thought I'd be taken by a shadow? That chuckle must have pissed it off. It slammed my head into the wall harder than all the other times. I heard a crack. I assumed it was me, but it didn't matter. I let myself be consumed by the dark oblivion. It felt comforting. All this time, I had been avoiding the dark. If I had known it'd feel this peaceful, I would have run toward it.
I just noticed something. Bus teams cut off. The horror stories. Okay. Good reason why. It's the end of it. Okay.
What was altogether like 10 hours?
Oh, that one's like only 40 hours. This one here is like, I don't know, 30 seconds. No, that's advertising. Anybody come on and say anything after?
There's anything up there.
Mm. Use up scotch, would you? Using up scotch, jamming. I'm sorry, one man that don't do that. Kevin, man that don't have a draw. It's only me. Got to have one sensible one.
When you came off the straight line.
We got to have one sensible one in the bunch.
Of worms. The forest is very dense and barely any light shines through, which makes the whole setting a bit unnerving for me, as I have always been easily frightened. I hear something walking and I look at my brother with a very scared face. He brushes it off as if there was nothing to be afraid of, and insists that we go check it out. We walk a bit further down the trail, which I know leads to an open meadow, as I have been there looking for mushrooms with my mom at a previous occasion. Before we get to the open, my brother holds up his hands as to indicate for me to stop. I looked over his shoulder and see behind the trees what appears to be a moose looking directly at us.
See?
I got relieved as I knew they were friendly, and as I had seen plenty of moose nearby. My brother, however, who has never been scared of anything, looks back at me with the biggest eyes I've ever seen, and the most pale I've ever seen someone, as he tells me we should get out of here.
Like
without questioning, I start to walk back while he keeps pushing me as to make me move quicker, and as we reach the cabin, we are pretty much running. My mom and grandma were
That's
sitting at the
proof
porch
here.
as we got into the front.
It's more
And
than
I tell
what
them
you
that we
think
saw
is
a
watching.
moose.
There's probably
My
60
brother, on the
people
other
watching.
hand, remains completely silent.
Well,
Safe
well,
to say
give
that
it
there was no
like
fishing
5
that
people
day.
here, 5 people there.
The following day,
Well, it's no
we didn't even
difference from
bring up
me and you.
fishing. I'm sitting on the porch reading
No
a
difference from
magazine.
Well, there's
me
2
and
My
people
you.
brother
here.
is sitting beside on the
Exactly.
couch doing the same.
Exactly.
Although he
See?
still has the scared look
You
in
got
his
it.
eyes. I spend the
We
following
just watched
hour
some of
or
this
two
little ice
reading
cream
several
and showing up
magazines
4.
until my grandpa asks
He
me
said
where the
it'll be
shovel is.
40.
I realize that we left it where we were
Well,
looking
they
for
have a
worms
house
the
full.
previous day, and I tell him where it is. Just as he was about to go
You
to
gotta
get
go
it,
way
my
back.
mother tells me that my brother and I have to go get it, since we left it there. She also tells me that we should go dig up some worms, as she wants to go fishing later with us. I don't question it, but my brother seems unnerved by it. This made everything all the more unsettling for me, as my brother is not easily scared
I'm
at all,
watching you on
pretty much
2
the opposite of
different
me. We put on our
series.
shoes and head to the back of the cabin and
Mhm.
walk down the trail heading to where the
Good,
shovel and
you
bucket
wicked.
is. Once we are about 10 feet from where the shovel is, my brother stops and tells me I should go and dig, as he did it the last time.
On TV.
I do as he
Holy
says, and I
crap.
start digging for worms. I have this very strong feeling that he stayed back because he was scared something would happen. I start hearing the
Oh,
bushes
don't take
around me
2.
sway, and I hear sneaky footsteps moving closer and closer. Everything is all the more creepy as I have no idea where the footsteps are coming from. 1 second, I'm sure they're coming from my right. The next, it feels like they're coming from a completely opposite direction. I quickly put a few worms that I found in the bucket, and as I fumble to pick up the shovel, I feel as I'm being watched. My brother walks up to me and helps me seal the bucket, and I tell him it feels like someone is watching, to which he responds that we should leave. Just as we turn around and are ready to head back, I hear a crack from behind me and turn around. I look down the trail and see the moose once again, peeking at me from behind a tree. It looked very different from what they usually look like, as it felt much slimmer and sort of twisted. At the time, I'm more confused and curious than I am scared.
Oh, hi,
My brother is dead
right,
silent. I can't quite see the whole body of it, but I know that something is wrong.
I know.
I stand for a couple more seconds watching it,
How do you
as
do
it
it
is
to an
staring
animal?
right at
Doesn't matter
us.
cat or dog.
From what I can see, I realize that it's not
Yep.
standing on its
Or
4 legs. It is leaned forward, as an old man with really bad posture, with its arms hanging straight down. I also had a weird sensation that the creature was trying to talk to me, saying, "Let me help you."
Mhm.
In a few seconds, I get struck with panic and start walking really fast back to the cabin, my brother doing the same. It only takes a second before we are both in a full sprint running back to the cabin. I turn around and the moose-like creature is nowhere to be seen. We put the shovel by the shed where we took it and bring the bucket of worms to the front where my mom and grandparents are. The day goes on as if nothing had happened, and we don't speak of it at all. Since this happened, I never thought I'd bring it up with my brother. We both just sort of knew that it would feel wrong to speak about it, and none of us had visited my grandparents' cabin since. To this day, I'm not sure at all what I saw. I mentioned it to my friend once, and he told me if what I said was true, then it was probably a Wendigo or a skinwalker. He showed me some pictures from Google, and I instantly found resemblances of the creature that I saw back then. Until recently, I had completely repressed this event, but after reading several stories about Wendigo and skinwalkers, my mind has once again become haunted by this event. And in a terrible way, I realized that what I most likely saw was something far more horrific than a moose. Out of all the things I've read about Wendigo, the most terrifying thing is that people say never to talk to it. I'm just imagining in my head what could have happened if I tried talking back to the creature and I felt it was speaking to me. Part 2. Alright, so some people asked me to share more regarding the events that happened when I was visiting my grandparents' cabin. I have not been there since, but my grandmother and her new husband stay there every summer. No, this is about 6 years ago, since the moose incident. Through the magic of Facebook, I contacted my grandma. We don't know each other all too well anymore, so I don't really feel comfortable calling her. I told her about the moose-like creature and how my brother and I both saw it. She proceeded by typing for nearly 15 minutes, and I waited patiently. Her reply was a full story of her own encounter. What she said, she had hoped to be just a dysfunctional moose. Her writing was in Swedish, so I will do my best to translate it. About 20 years ago, I was staying in the cabin by myself. your grandpa was working at the time, so I was alone for the whole week. One night, while I was sleeping, I woke up with an uneasy feeling. I wasn't sure why, but I just knew something was wrong. I felt as if I was being watched.
Yeah.
My first thought was to fall back asleep, and so I did. I woke up in what I believe was about an hour, and this time I was sure something wasn't as it should be. I felt the same feeling of being watched,
Oh,
and I
put
could
on,
clearly hear
put on
something moving
YouTube.
outside. I grab my bedside candle and light it.
Oh, her little
As I
hair's
get out of
getting
bed,
bad.
I choose to not pull the curtains as I have a terrifying feeling that someone will be staring right at me. By now, I am convinced that something is trying to rob me. I was sleeping in the room at the back of the cabin, and so I walked up to the front and looked out by the porch, but see nothing. There are no neighbors nearby, and I can't call the police as I don't have a phone.
Oh
I
my.
decide to go back to bed and try to sleep the fear away. I lay there for at least an hour without falling asleep, and although the sound is gone, the unpleasant feeling has stuck around. At the back side of the cabin, right outside my window, was an older cabin, which was used before this one was built. The place was creepy, and we eventually decided to burn it down some years later. Anyways, I hear something bumping around side of it, and I realize that I'm gonna have to look out the window. I get out of bed, light the candle again, and pull the curtains. The uneasy feeling is still there, and I have the strongest feeling that something is going to stare right back at me. I pull the curtains, and for a complete second, I am caught in complete terror. I see something staring right back at me, but it's no robber. It's not a person. It's a moose. I expected to be relieved to find that it was nothing but a harmless animal, but that is far from what I was. After a few seconds, I calmed down, and the panic faded a bit. The thing was still staring at me, but it was sure not a normal moose. I took a few seconds to investigate it, for at first, it was not standing on four legs. It was bent forward, as if in the upper front legs were just barely floating above the ground. It was also much slimmer than moose usually are, and it had this sort of disturbing twist in the body. The antlers looked flat out terrifying. Naturally, it doesn't say anything, but I had this strong feeling that it wanted me to come out. It wanted me to let it help me. Although I felt that's what it wanted me to hear, I just knew the thing had bad intentions. I faint within a few seconds, and I wake up in the morning and let out a scream of panic. The creature is gone, and I am contemplating whether or not I was dreaming. To this day, I was unsure if this actually happened, or if I was just dreaming. Now that I know you saw the same thing, I know it was real. My grandma suggested that I tell my brother that I spoke to her about it, and I am seriously considering doing so. I mean, this for sure confirms that what we saw was not a normal moose. I had some thoughts, thinking it might have just been a handicapped or dysfunctional moose. But by the way my grandma said it tried to communicate with her and convince her, I knew it was the same thing that my brother and I encountered, as it too tried to talk to us. Apparently, she had already told this story to my mom and grandpa, but they just brushed it off and said it was either an injured moose or she was dreaming. Hearing about this story just made me all the more scared, but at the same time curious about what the creature actually was, and what was its purpose. Was he trying to lure us into the forest? Was he actually trying to help us with something? Hopefully, I get some more clarification the more I talk to people about it. I ended up sending some pictures of Wendigo and skinwalkers to her, and she definitely saw resemblances between them. That all sent shivers down my spine. To all of the people reading this, if you ever encounter a weird-looking creature with antlers, do not speak with it, or even acknowledge their presence. That's what they want.
Manda, I got good news.
So this is a story about an experience I had late last year.
I'll tell her,
I was in
Christian.
Dorset, UK, the night before Christmas Eve.
I'll let her know.
Opinions are welcome,
I'll let
as
her
I
know,
can't really
Christian,
explain
when
it.
she comes out.
And everyone I tell the story to thinks I'm just crazy, or I'm making it up. What makes me think this may not be a skinwalker is that I've always heard that they won't enter a person's home unless you specifically invite them in, unless it took the open window as an invitation. In addition, I have nothing which to explain the orb and flashes, unless I'm really losing my mind. Either way, I don't claim to have any literary ability.
That's a magic mushroom.
I also didn't know anything about skinwalkers until I tried to figure out what this thing was. I'll just tell it like I experienced it. I was staying with my parents for a while in my old bedroom, We had picked up the house cheaply just 3 years prior, when its former elderly owner suddenly passed away in one of the bedrooms. A friend and I had been hanging out for a week or so, enjoying the holiday, playing video games, going for short walks with my sister's dog on the nearby beach surrounding the fields. On the 22nd of December, this friend left to go spend Christmas with his own family, and not knowing what to do with my newfound bedroom for the evening, I decided to go to sleep early, around 9 p.m. for a change. My bedroom is on the second floor, and my window was left open a few inches to let in a cool breeze. My sleep was restless. I kept waking and re-entering sleep every half hour until around midnight, when I finally drift off for good. Or so I thought. Now, I don't often have dreams, and if I do, I don't remember much of them. But the dream that I had this night was stranger than the others, and it is relevant to the rest of the story. I was seeing through the eyes of another person as they emerged from a bush in one of my neighbor's gardens. They were steadily and silently approaching my own garden, climbing over a 6-foot wooden fence as easily as you or I climb a set of stairs. I couldn't see any hands or feet. It was as if it was a steady cam, just gliding over the ground. My sister's dog was asleep on the tiny patch of grass near the tree, and I came to a stop directly beneath my open window. The viewpoint then switched to resting on a branch near the top of the tree in my garden, watching the back of a pale white humanoid figure silently glide up the side of my house and looking at me through my open window. This is where I woke up, covered in a cold sweat, and decided that I should just lay there for a while with my eyes closed. All I could hear was the wind in the trees outside as I thought about the dream, hoping to remember some more of it. Without warning, the silence was broken by my sister's dog barking like crazy. About 10 seconds later, it turned to yelping before fading into silence once more. Thinking it was squirrels or something else spooking the dog, I planned to go back to sleep. But then I started to hear slow scratching sounds on the wooden paneling on the outside of the house.
Any particular color
It only
you would
covers
want
the
for her
second
to make?
floor, so I reasoned that it couldn't have been my sister's dog. So I sat up, intending
Whatever
to take
you
a
want,
look
bottom
outside,
pink or
pausing
whatever.
momentarily to glance sideways at the radio clock illuminating the room with its yellow-orange glow. And of course, it's 3:33 a.m.
Well, you would like
exactly.
know, would you?
This is when the unexplainable intense fear washes over me, stronger than I have ever felt before or since. It definitely felt like something was in the room with me, like I was somehow intruding or being watched. I thought I could hear a low murmuring coming from all around me.
What?
I saw something move across the ceiling and come to rest behind the room's main light shade. I closed my eyes and lay down again for reasons I can't explain even now, as if I was being willed by an outside force. Then, with my eyes still closed, a floating white orb appeared roughly where I had seen the shadow on the ceiling, accompanied by the sound of 1,000 lighters being sparked at once. It was almost deafening. There was a bright white flash that filled the room with light that I could clearly see with my eyes still closed.
Red and purple.
As the flash subsided, I was left in total darkness again. I immediately sat upright, wondering what just
Amanda's
happened.
favorite colors, red
Slowly,
and purple.
I reached for the bedside light with my right arm, and it wouldn't turn on. Memories of unplugging it so my friend could recharge his laptop at some point earlier in the week.
That's Amanda's favorite colors. So
it was only then when I was made fully
Kristen,
aware
she
of
can
the dark
have one.
humanoid figure
Hey,
now
Kristen,
standing completely
she can have one for
motionless in the
you,
center
red
of
and
my
purple.
room, beneath the
Red
main light. As it
and purple.
unnaturally snapped its head to the left to watch my arm reaching for the
Magic
light.
mushrooms.
It slowly turned its head back onto me, and I couldn't make out any facial features. It was as if its skin absorbed all light like a black hole. I stayed there for a good 2 minutes, just paralyzed in fear, not really comprehending what it was I was looking at. Then, it abruptly, in a very jerking, unnatural movements, took a single step towards me and extended its open hand, ending in long, almost talon-like fingers. As it came even closer, I felt fear increase proportionally to its distance from me. It was almost touching my face when fight-or-flight mode engaged without even thinking. I jumped out of bed and slammed on the wall to turn on the main light switch. My head flicked back to cast a fresh eye on the thing, where inside of a fraction of a second, it crossed the room and threw itself out the open window, clearing the garden in a single jump before disappearing into the night at an impossible
That rhymes.
I went downstairs to check on the rest of the house to make sure my parents were okay. Into the garden, I found my sister's dog whining softly.
I don't mean nothing.
And
White Ray
attempting to
might
hide
be a
behind the
woman.
tree, shaking.
Because on
I can't stop
YouTube, anything
thinking
is
back to that
possible.
experience, wondering what would have happened
Anything
if I
is
stayed
possible on
put, or even
YouTube.
taken its hand. I've always
I
been a
don't
bit of a
know, but
skeptic.
I
Ever
don't
since
know,
I was a
White
kid.
Ray.
Scary stories don't faze me. Creepy games never
What would you
frighten
think
me.
be
And
good
whenever
for
I hear
me?
something weird at night, I instantly assume it's something normal, an animal,
White
or
Ray
just the
goes,
house settling. Despite this, something very unsettling happened to me the other day, and I'm not really sure
What would you like to me? What
I think
would
it's
you
the
like
first
for
time
me
in
to
years
do?
I've been genuinely frightened. I live in a forest area.
Please
in
don't
the
say what I'm
US.
thinking, because
Me and my girlfriend live in a large cabin, and although there are no roads nearby, our nearest neighbors are at least a mile away. We
Amanda,
also have two cats,
Here's the purple.
one of which sleeps in the bedroom with us, while the other
Kristen,
often goes out at night
there's the
and does
purple.
whatever cats do when they're out of
Purple
sight.
on the bottom or on
Anyway,
top.
I like to stay up late at night and sleep late into the morning,
And
whereas
there's
my
the red.
girlfriend's an early bird.
Purple and red, like
It
you
was
said,
1 in the
Kristen.
morning, and I was watching a crappy
I
TV
have
in the
this.
living room while my girlfriend slept in the bedroom.
See? Purple
I
and
was
red.
beginning to grow tired
Purple,
when I heard
red,
something outside
or
near the cat door.
red
For clarity, our
and
cat door
purple.
uses an electronic chip, so only our cats can
Purple,
use it.
red,
I assumed it was just one of the
or
cats
red and
coming
purple.
in or leaving the house,
Purple,
and I
red,
just
purple.
ignored it.
Yeah.
Then I heard it again. It sounded like something thudding against the cat door. It
Well,
happened
she can
several
ask me
times
purple
at
and red
random
for you.
intervals until I lost my patience
I
and
love
decided to go open the door. Clearly,
She said
the
she'd
cat was
love
having
it.
trouble getting in. I never thought about it at the time, but it was weird because we feed our cats
Hey,
well,
Kristen.
and they're very lean.
Kristen,
rather than
ask
chubby.
me one thing.
I passed
Do you
the
want the
bedroom and peered in
bottom
as I
or the
walked
top
past
purple?
to see if my girlfriend heard the
You want
noises.
the top purple
She was
or the
fast
bottom
asleep,
purple?
but the cat that sleeps with us was staring at the window. I call her name.
I say the
Nothing.
bottom purple
She keeps staring.
is better.
I shrugged it off and kept heading towards the kitchen. The back doors are through there, by the way. Anyway, so I reached the back door and saw a dark
she
shape
can
through the
go
translucent
The
door.
bottom.
I
Okay.
sighed, expecting the cat to be out
The
there,
bottom
and
purple.
opened the door. It took me a moment to open the door,
Because
and I saw the cat tense up as I
If
opened
Amanda
it.
don't know,
The door
like,
opened
forgets
fully.
what I'm talking about,
I
like, she can go
froze.
on this and
It
check
wasn't
to
my
the
cat.
live stream,
Whatever it
right?
was had started moving before I opened it up.
She can
I
check
only
the
caught a
live stream,
glimpse of a
see what we're
distorted
talking
figure,
about after.
kind of like a tailless dog, bolting, and I mean absolutely
She wants
pelting
the
it.
bottom
I
purple.
freaked out and slammed the door shut.
I
What the hell
just
was
told
it?
Christian and
I
everybody
wasn't
here,
sure.
I said,
My natural
if
skepticism kicked
Amanda
in,
forgets what she's
and I
talking
assumed
about,
it was just my
I
other
said,
cat,
all
and I
she
had
had to do
merely
is go
startled
on
it.
the live
Perhaps the
stream
darkness
again
made it appear
and
larger.
look what the
Nevertheless, I
time
was creeped
Oh, yeah.
out,
between
and I decided
1
to go to
hour
sleep.
and
As I
say
slipped
3
into
minutes.
bed, I realized
Between an
something
hour and 3
horrifying.
minutes.
The
So
second
just
cat
click on 1
was
hour and
asleep on
just
the
watch
rug.
till 3 minutes and you
It
should
took
be
a
able to
while to
see
get to sleep that night.
what's she
Everything
saying.
seemed normal until a few hours later. I awoke to a
Magic
strange feeling
mushroom.
of dread. Something
LOL.
wasn't right.
Yeah.
My girlfriend was fast asleep. I held my breath and heard something creaking by the door. It sounded too loud to be one of the cats. It was as if a person was walking about. I reached toward my bedside cabinet and flicked on the lamp. The room was illuminated, and I saw something just standing outside the door, staring at me. The same twisted figure I had spotted earlier outside. It wasn't very tall, maybe a little over 5 feet, but it was its face that scared me the most. I only caught a glimpse of it, but what I saw will stay with me forever.
What
It
you
looked
should
like a
have done,
dog,
cut
but with
the
an elongated
cloth
face
and measure
and
the
almost
length.
human-like
Well,
eyes.
it is about.
You know that
that,
weird,
yeah.
distorted
It
snarl
might
Yeah.
be a
dogs
little bit
pull when
bigger
they're
and a
pissed
little bit
off?
smaller.
It had that expression.
And I'm
I
worried
instantly
about
started
the
yelling
clock.
profanities as I scrabbled backwards, trying to straighten up. The creature turned and sprinted down the hall. I heard it dash outside and go past the window behind us, just above the headboard. I managed to look out as my girlfriend started to panic as she woke up fully.
That had to hurt when
We
it
both
started
caught a
burning.
glimpse of whatever the hell
yeah.
that thing was as it dashed
Oh,
off into the
geez.
woods near our home. Grabbing my trusty shotgun from underneath the bed, as well as a couple rounds from the ammunition box that sits next to it, I ran out of the room in my
Christian,
underwear and
she
rounded into
started
the
your
kitchen.
magic
The
mushroom.
door was open. I'd forgotten to lock it when I
You won't
saw
keep
the
it
thing
long.
originally.
She started making it.
I haven't seen it since, but we still live in our cabin. But I've bought sturdy locks for all the main doors and windows in the house, and always check the exit points at night. I also go
I
to
don't
bed
know
a bit
because I
earlier
never
than I
seen her
used
down
to.
here.
So
I
I'm
can't
asleep
say yes
when
and
the
I can't
freaks of
say
the
no.
night start to wake
If
up.
it tells you yes, I'll be
I've read a
telling
bunch
you a
of
lie. If
forums,
it tells
the
you
only
no,
thing that
I'll
I
be
could
telling you a
compare it to,
lie.
based on what I saw,
Honestly,
is a
Dan,
skinwalker.
I don't know what to tell
If you
you.
know anything about these things,
You have to
please
call
let me
down
know.
and ask the man yourself because I literally don't know what to tell you.
As I am writing you this, other skinwalkers are in front of my house. They are surrounding me. If I die, I want you to know what happened. I stand alone. Nobody to help me. I hear them
Dan,
howling. By my
I got nothing to
estimation,
tell you.
there are at least 5
I'm
of them.
serious.
But let's tell the
Dan's
story from the
asking
beginning,
me,
shall we?
Is Paul's mother still
My
around
childhood
here?
was nice.
I'm like,
It was
geez,
going
I don't
smooth
know,
and buttery
like-
until my 8th birthday. After a long day and a party with my friends, summer heat slowly disappeared as the night
I'm
came
here to
on.
do my
I was out in the
of work
backyard playing
and
with
get
my
the fuck out
Spider-Man
of here.
figure.
I
I
had
was
nothing to
feeling
do with
safe
him.
and happy until my dog shot across the yard and ran off
I got
into the
nothing to do with
forest.
him. I'm
I
here
should
to do my
probably
10
describe the
hours and
dog.
get to Jesus
He
home.
was a big Siberian husky, white. His name was Johnny. Anyways, back to the story. The dog shocked me. Then in a second, I went from feeling safe to feeling like I could die at any moment. Right then, fog rolled into my backyard. I could see the outline of a figure standing in it. Then, a wolf howled. It sounded like a wolf at first.
Run that through that.
It sounded wrong.
Scissors.
I screamed for my dad,
yes,
who came
yes,
out
yes,
running.
yes, yes.
I told him about
Oh, yeah,
Johnny
what
and
you
the wolf
remember
howling.
earlier.
He then
Sharp
said,
mind.
"Son, there's
That's
no
when
wolves
you
in
want to
this
say to your
country."
mom and dad, say,
He ushered me inside and grabbed his shotgun and
what's your
went
name,
searching for
Christian?
Johnny.
Mhm.
He came
Christian
back
told me,
empty-handed, but I knew something
This
happened,
is me.
that he saw something.
Christian is
I
me.
could see it in his
Yeah.
eyes.
Let's tell
That
him.
night, he stayed awake on the couch,
said,
gripping his shotgun until the sun came up.
up.
From that point on,
Honest to
every
God,
night
my
the
dad
fog
seen
would
it
roll
on
in our
YouTube.
backyard, and
And
the
he
figure
tried
would
it?
start howling.
Holy fuck.
As I grew
The-
older,
The noise
I could not be
is
convinced
a
by my father it was
razor,
just a wolf.
And I mean, it's just like a
So,
scaffold.
on one winter
Razor.
evening, he sat me down in the
Holy
couch
shit.
by the fireplace
It's
and
what
told me a
happens is the
story.
steel gets in, like,
Son,
in
long before
between
men
the
ruled the
grooves,
other
Mhm.
creatures
and
lived
it
on it.
sharps it. Oh
So,
my
naturally,
God.
when we came, they felt angry. They wanted to get rid of us. That thing you see every night howling is one of them. They are called skinwalkers.
I
They
say
are sort
that's
of shapeshifters.
okay. She's
They
working
can
the
take the shape of a
office.
human or animal.
She worked
Also, they
here
take their
years ago.
memories, their voice,
Oh
their
jeez,
life.
I don't know, boy.
But you can always recognize the skinwalker from the real deal. When they speak,
I
there is
really
something
don't pay
wrong in their
attention.
voice.
That's truth,
A
Dan.
certain amount of something sinister. My
That's the
son,
truth, me buddy.
I
I
have dealt
really
with
never pay
skinwalkers all my
attention
life.
if she's here or not.
Looks like you'll have to do that too. He then gave me an unmarked red leather-bound book and told me to read it in its entirety.
Is this something I'm supposed
so
to
I
be concerned about?
In it was everything about skinwalkers.
Why did
How
you
do they
bring
live?
that up? Is this
What they
something I'm
do?
supposed to be
What do
concerned
they feed
about?
on and how to hunt them? My
something
father
you
then
know
moved away
that
to the
I'm-
city
like,
when I
is
was
it-
20.
It,
He knew then I
is
could
it
guard the
something
front
that
line.
you know
Fast
that I
forward a
don't?
few days ago, I was in the backyard of the same house.
Is it something?
Me,
Some
now a
people
fully
bring
grown
stuff
male,
like that.
25
It's
years
like,
old.
kind of
I
like,
was guarding, and an idea came to my mind.
yeah, like something
I'm
happening
gonna catch
or
that
what?
skinwalker.
Like there's something
So I
happening?
prepared my traps, some signs, and put my lucky necklace on my neck. I poured holy water everywhere, in the sprinklers too. Put salt in my shotgun gauges, also in my sniper rifle rounds. Night came, and by my expectations, at around 10 p.m. the fog came in. What was driving me to hunt this
I got
skinwalker
4
was
drinks on
this.
before I started
I
that.
can't have a family with this thing around us. Why, you may ask, because this skinwalker didn't do anything to me. Wrong. He got my dog. My dad found it in the creek a few days later after he was hunting. He took a good friend of mine. I didn't want my kids to live a life like
I
me,
never heard
to be
nothing,
scared
Paul.
constantly,
I never heard
to
nothing.
not
My
have a
boss,
teenage
Paul,
life just
saying
because this
nothing
thing
about it.
came every night and attacked my house.
I got to be
So,
honest,
when the
Dan,
fog
I don't
came,
know.
I got ready on my roof and waited. After only 10 minutes of waiting, it was here.
I'm going to be
He
totally
started doing
honest,
his
I
usual,
don't know.
howling and
I
throwing
don't
stuff
know
at
if
my
she is or
house,
not.
mostly animal carcasses. And then, out of nowhere, I turned the
Like I
sprinklers
said,
on.
I'm not
It
there to
screamed
make
so
friends.
hard it
I'm
was
there
shaking my
to...
house. Then I
got
shot
one
at it with
friend.
my
I
silver
got one
bullet
friend
with some
down here. I'm
salt.
there to do
It
my
came
work,
down, but I knew it
get
wasn't
paid,
dead.
and
It was just
enjoy me week.
unconscious. I
Like
then
I
came
am
down
now.
from the roof. I didn't turn off the sprinklers. I picked the thing up. It must have weighed around 300 pounds. But I was a huge dude, 6'8". I have trained for this my entire life.
6'8".
I was ready. I took it into my basement and strapped it into a chair and placed in a cage that had electricity running through its bars. I then waited for it to wake up. When it did, it started howling immediately. It changed from its wolf shape to one of my dead friends just to hurt me.
Almost 8 foot.
I left it there to rot.
7'8". I think it's
But
like
then
7 foot.
it started
12,
howling
and then
again.
addition- after
It
that,
called
you see
another.
to the-
This brings me to this moment. It's still
Well,
howling.
if he's
They are
tall and you got
surrounding
feet
me.
like that,
I have
well,
ammo
he's got
and
a
food
thing
in my
on, like,
bunker. My house was
Like a
built like a
horse.
fortress.
is it probably
The
like
chance
that?
of survival
Like,
is
why is he
small.
rubbing his
I will
leg
try
all
to
the time
stop
in
them,
school?
to save you. So if I die here, take my example. Be prepared for everything.
My God, poor kid. He's so cold.
Last night, I had an experience with what I believe to be a skinwalker. I was sleeping on my couch. I'm in the process of remodeling my bedroom. It had been storming on and off all night.
Now, how your
But in
stories?
that moment, the wind was only blowing.
How your stories?
It was about 1 in the
of that
morning
old
when I was
woman?
woken up by a very strange noise.
She was really
I can't
nice.
describe it that well,
I'm
but it
guessing
sounded
she
like an
still
animal
is.
call, except as if
I
a
don't know
human was
nothing
making
about the woman,
sound.
right?
It was a
I
long,
don't know
deep
nothing about
noise
the
that
woman.
kept on going,
Like, seriously, I don't know
almost like
nothing
a
about her.
foghorn. It sounded like it
I
was
don't know
right
nothing
outside my
about them.
window,
I
in
carry
my
on with them
backyard.
every now and
In
on,
case
but
you're wondering, I
I
live
don't
in a
know who
country
they
near the
are. I
Ozark
don't know their
Mountains,
personal
and
life
directly
and
on the
stuff
Trail
like
of
that.
Tears. I've lived out there, in the middle of the woods my whole life. I've heard and seen everything. Bears, deer,
But I heard the old
cougars,
woman, boy, when
raccoons,
she was down
coyotes.
there, I was saying
But the
things. She
sound
was
that I heard
really
that
nice.
night wasn't like anything that I've ever
Really
heard.
nice. I heard
I'm
she
not
was a
going to
really
lie.
nice woman.
It scared the absolute hell out of me. I immediately went to my bedroom. I have a window that looks into my backyard as well. I wanted to see whatever it was, but I didn't want to pull back my living room curtains to come face to face with it.
I just heard this
I couldn't
vibrate.
see anything through my bedroom window, so I turned around and started walking back to the living room. Then something hit my window.
Oh, I'll show you
It wasn't
something
strong
like
enough
this.
to break it. It just sounded like someone hit the palm of their hand on the glass. At that point, I went back to sleep and ignored the sound. Looking back on it, I should have recorded it, and I tried when the noise came back the next night. But every time I took out my phone, it stopped. Today, I built up enough courage to go into my backyard and to investigate. There were loose limbs everywhere. I had a bonfire a few weeks ago. The remaining ashes had been dug through, not blown by the wind or damaged by the rain. No, it looked like something took their hands and dug a hole.
That's gonna.
I did some research. I think it's a skinwalker. No stranger to these things. I've heard lots of stories about them. And considering I've seen several things walking through the woods through my lifetime, I'm starting to become really convinced.
Okay.
So this happened to me last September, and I'm writing about it now, only because I've read so many experiences people have had that I'm at a point where I'm more comfortable talking about what happened. My best friends live out by a country farmland in Michigan. The land is very old and probably traces back to the Native
But I wanted to
Americans.
show you what
There is even a nearby
somebody here
road
in
called
life
Indian
had
Trail.
done to their
Well,
bedroom
it was around
because of
1:30
me.
a.m., and I was leaving their house.
Seriously.
And to paint a visual of what
It's
their
because
yard
of
looks
me.
like,
They
the driveway is in the shape of a U, and they have many cars parked
I'll show
except for
you.
this one part near the front of the house where there is a giant evergreen tree nobody ever parks in front of,
Her.
and a light that hangs over
Yes,
to illuminate this
Yeah.
area.
Yep.
Where my car was parked is the
Show
furthest to the left, and I have to walk across the entire yard and past the tree in order to get to my car.
Don't look
Mhm.
familiar?
Well,
Yeah.
as I left that night,
Oh my gosh,
I
I
reached
made
about
one.
the center of the
No,
yard and
that's
suddenly
yours.
felt my heart rate was
That's why we
skyrocketing.
send her.
This
That's her.
happened
That's
out
her
of nowhere,
Oh God!
and I started
Oh my
running to get to
God.
my
That's in her
car as
bedroom.
fast as I could.
Guess what?
As I
Yeah.
got into my car, my front windows were
That's in her
foggy,
bedroom.
and as I started the car, there was a
Yeah.
small patch clearing up at the bottom of the
Yeah.
windshield where I
Yeah.
could see clearly. And that's when I saw
Couldn't
the thing
believe that when I
squatting by
seen
the
that.
evergreen tree and
It's
watching
like,
me.
holy
I have
shit.
never had that feeling as though my body was burning at 300 degrees and my heart was in my throat throbbing. I looked through that small patch of my window, which was now
Nice.
growing larger, and the thing wasn't moving. It was still frozen in place and squatting. It was not
I
human.
guess she collects rocks.
It was not animal either. My body went numb. All of this happened in a matter of 30 seconds, and I backed out of the driveway and drove down the dirt road to get home, probably driving 70 miles an hour. I immediately repressed what happened to that point, and I don't even remember how I got home. The next day comes around, and I go over to their house again, and I was sitting in my friend's room, and I told her that I saw something in her yard last night.
Oh
And she
Jesus!
freaked
Yeah,
out
but
at me
look.
because she
Oh,
said it
yeah,
could be
huh?
a robber or a thief.
Yep.
And I told her no. It wasn't a person.
Oh, that's funny.
I described it as the khaki man
Oh my
because it
geez,
looked
I
like
got
those saggy khaki tan pants,
I got shirt,
but only the entire body was that texture. The head was
forward
bald,
down
with
the
ears
belly.
folded into the scalp, and pitch black, beady eyes,
Billy
like round
Williams.
buttons.
Yeah, William. Oh, Frank.
Well, her husband overheard me talking about this, and he entered the room halfway into the story,
Okay,
waited for me to finish, and told me that him, his dad, and brother have all seen it at once, and they called it Gollum,
I send Christian.
like the creature from the Lord of the Rings. I didn't know what it was, and they showed me a figurine of it. It had similar resemblance to it.
Kenneth.
None of them ever seen it more than once. I told them that I didn't want to know anything more about it, and I tried to erase that this ever happened because it literally flipped my entire perception of this world around. Anything is possible. And while I've had paranormal experiences growing up as a child, I wasn't too scared about things like that. But to come across a creature that is not something my brain could have ever comprehended at this point, I believe that all kinds of things are out there. But all this time has passed since, and I'm still traumatized from it. I don't want to live in fear, and I still visit my friends frequently. But ever since then, they always walk me out if I'm leaving late at night. After a couple months passed, I decided that I wanted to know what it was that I saw.
Frank.
And after diving deep into online forums of people's paranormal experiences, I came across a story mentioning the term skinwalker,
I'll show you
which I'd never heard before. So I decided to look it up, and that's what sparked my interest on researching more. I have read tons of stories online about encounters others have had with skinwalkers, which led me to research more about Navajo Native American folklore and the one who walks on all fours. A part of me thinks that it could have certainly been that, but another part of me is not so sure, because this thing almost looked alien, and not so much like a coyote, although we often hear coyotes in this area late at night. I described what this looked like to my friend who lives at the house, and she illustrated a spot-on picture of it. That I'll attach here. I would love to hear from any of you with possible insight related to the subject of skinwalkers, as well as if you've seen anything like this. I have had some nightmares from it, and have thought about possibly talking to a Native American shaman who owns a shop nearby. But I'm not sure how I could approach a topic like that because it's a topic they don't like to speak about, which is why I wanted to share it here first.
Jesus, is that you, Gerry? You got some tan.
I told this story to some friends tonight, after not thinking about it for a while, and remembered how odd and creepy it really is. The man who told me about this terrifying experience in the Colorado wilderness is one of those distinct relatives that everyone has. They're your third cousin, twice removed, or something to that effect. I'm not positive exactly how we're related, but he's an incredible guy. I'll call him Greg. Greg is a decorated green beret with a silver star to his name that he earned by capturing the leader of an Afghan sniper cell without incurring any casualties. Despite his status of a huge badass, and not his inconsiderable size, 6'3", 200 pounds, Greg is a teddy bear, just an extremely humble, kind person. I have a lot of experience in the outdoors, and I've lived in Colorado for most of my life. And Greg and I had an extended conversation about our adventures in the woods at my grandmother's house for Thanksgiving. We were sitting on the couch wearing tacky holiday sweaters when a conversation turned to hunting. Greg mentioned offhand that he used to be an avid hunter, but had an experience that turned him off to it. He doesn't even like guns anymore. Something I found surprising coming from an accomplished soldier. I pushed him to tell me what happened, and though he seemed uncomfortable with the idea, he finally did. I'm going to switch to first person now and try to write exactly what Greg told me. It was late October, which means elk season is up in the Indian Peaks wilderness, and I went up there to bag a few elk and just relax for a few days by myself. I parked the truck near a trailhead about 8 miles from where I would end up setting up camp, and was looking forward to the nice weekend in the woods with some nice peace and quiet after packing all my gear and getting ready. The first morning, I was in my deer blind, about 20 feet up in a tree, with a cup of coffee and my rifle. The sun had just come up an hour or so ago. About 50 yards from my tree, the tree line ended and opened up into a big meadow where a lot of elk tended to roll through. and I could sight my rifle pretty well through the trees and could see most of the big grassy area. Maybe a couple hours had passed, which really isn't boring that deep in the woods. I just drank my coffee from my thermos and listened to the life around me, feeling the woods, getting ready for winter. I couldn't believe my luck when I glanced over the meadow and saw a large group of elk that started grazing in the meadow. The silent animals plodded along, munching at the grass, oblivious to me watching. Among the group was one of the most beautiful elk I had ever seen. It was called a monarch, which means its antlers had 8 points each, something really rare. I quietly clicked the safety off my rifle and sighted in on it. When you're hunting an animal like this, you want to put the bullet right where the skull meets the spine, in order to sever the spinal column and kill it instantly and painlessly. The focus when you get in the zone is incredible. I swear I could feel the firing pin punch forward and the bullet leave the barrel as I pulled the trigger. That beautiful elk went down silently, and all the others scattered for the tree line. I was ecstatic about the shot and the elk as I climbed down the tree and set off for the meadow. I had left my rifle up in the tree, something I regretted soon, and I had only a small knife on me to gut the animal and drag it back to camp. As I was making the short walk between my tree and the meadow, I noticed that the woods around me were completely silent. Some of this is normal after you fire a gun in the woods, but for it to drag on this long was unsettling. I thought nothing of it and continued the short walk through the dense pines. As I was about to clear the trees and step into the meadow, I noticed something odd. I could see the elk's body lying in the grass through the trees, but there was something else there. There was what looked like another elk.
Oh my God! Me and my woman,
on the
we gotta
opposite
come
side
out
of the
and
dead elk
see him one of
from
these
where I was
days.
coming to walk out of the tree line, almost looking as though it was gently nuzzling the other elk's dead body. This was weird. To see another elk treat a dead elk like this, they usually just scatter. But I continued to walk towards it, hollering in an attempt to startle the other elk off. It snapped its head up and looked at me. Over the body of its fallen friend, the strange new elk eyed me with its unafraid glare. I say glare because I didn't feel like an animal.
And don't worry,
looking
the
at me
face.
anymore. Its
And
glassy
some
black
little
eyes
more
gave me the
added
same
little
caught
gore.
red-handed feeling that you got when your parents catch you when you're doing something wrong. I felt suddenly uncomfortable, out of place into the woods that I loved so much, and somehow hated and guilty. I no longer wanted the elk. I stopped dead in my tracks and watched this animal as it eyed me angrily. What it did next gives
Happy
me nightmares
Easter,
to this day.
Stephen and Tess.
It stood
Love
up,
you guys.
and it was not
Love you too,
an elk.
Melissa and Chris.
The thing that stood before me on the other side of the dead elk must have been lying on its stomach, and put its arms down and pushed up, putting its legs under it. It reared back,
What is
glaring at me all along with its evil glass eyes. My breath caught in my throat. Most of its body was at least somewhat human, but terribly emaciated and elongated.
number
It
7.
appeared to stand 10 feet tall, not including the antler on the top of the elk head. It was bald everywhere but the neck up, and looked
I know
sickly
what you're gonna
pale.
say. I know
Its
the
legs
Jesus
and
name
knees
you're gonna be
bent
something to carry
backwards,
me.
like the back legs of an elk.
yeah.
This
And I like
horrible,
a
skinny,
salad.
naked, unnatural thing just
Salad,
stood
Larry.
there, glaring at
You
me with a
see that?
hatred that was
Love
palpable.
you too, Gerry.
The woods around us were silent. It might have been seconds, minutes, or hours. I felt the
Hey,
disapproving
Tess,
parent feeling shift.
Tell Stephen I
felt
can
more
get
like
the
an
job
ant
done
under
in
a
Forest
shoe.
Products if he wants
I
to.
took a step back. My boots felt like 10 pounds. My body felt numb. And the noise of my footsteps was ear-splitting. I took one more and then turned and ran. Running through those thick woods is tough, but I ran faster than I ever have in my life. I passed under my tree with my
I don't
$4,000
do this
rifle
to
still
everybody,
sitting in it
but
without even slowing down.
like
I ran all the
he
way
is
back
my
to my
best
camp,
friend,
which
and
must have
we
been a
grew
mile
up
before I
together.
stopped for
So
a breath.
I'll
It
do
took me
that for
another minute
him.
to
I'll
dare
put a
to look
good word
behind
in
me.
for him.
I was alone, but the woods around me were still silent and brooding. I wanted more than anything to pack up and go home, but I knew that I would not likely make it back to the car before nightfall, and I did not want to be exposed at night. I cooked an MRE in my tent and stayed there the rest of the day. When night fell, I wrapped myself in my sleeping bag and tried to sleep, but I couldn't stop myself from staring at every little noise. I
don't know what
kept
the
thinking
hell they
about the
call that.
possible rational
I don't know if that's the
explanations for
middle
what I
finger,
saw.
index,
Maybe there's a
pinky,
crazy guy out there who found
middle,
an elk head and is wearing it
index,
around scaring
thumb.
people.
What the hell
But
do
no
they call that?
explanation came up when I quailed the maddening
Hey,
fear that I
guys.
felt. That horrible sense of being
let's-
hated and
let's
guilty,
settle this.
far from home.
Like,
And nothing
I
explained
don't know
why
what
that thing
one-
was 10 feet tall.
one
with
thing
inverted
is.
knees.
This is your
As soon as
thumb,
the sun
your
came up, I
pointer,
ran back
your
to the
middle,
wind
and
took
your
it
pinky.
down.
Okay?
And ran back to camp with my rifle and bag.
Thumb,
Packed
pointer,
everything up
middle,
and hiked
pinky.
out. I've never
But
fired
what's
a gun
this
in the
thing?
woods since, and I don't ever intend to again. I'm
The
not a
fuck's-
spiritual person,
What's that called?
but if that wasn't
What's that
something in
finger
the forest
called?
telling me to leave it alone, I don't know what is. I can take a hint. I don't think I'll ever know exactly
Ooh, I
what
got
that
something
creature
for you to
was.
try. It's gonna
But I know what I
freak you
saw.
out. Oh my god.
Next time you're up in the woods alone, be quiet, be respectful, and don't kill anything you don't have to.
Okay, buddy, calm down.
I thought at first Greg's story was too far-fetched to be true.
Yeah, make it
But as he
best.
told it,
Right?
I saw
Yeah.
how truly scared he was. This confident, soft-spoken military man was shuddering
that.
through his story,
Oh,
hands
just what?
shaking
Okay,
and
yeah.
face pale. I don't know what to make of
Like
it,
that.
but he said the area this occurred
No.
is one I'm quite
Look,
familiar
they're all
with,
close.
and it can be quite an eerie
Alright.
place.
Like that.
I have had a few experiences solo camping up there, but nothing on this scale.
That.
Sometimes, being alone in the woods can feel like
Okay.
anything but.
And that one.
It just might be that there's some force out there, some inhuman creature that guards the woods. Just in case.
It's weird,
I take
isn't
extra
it?
care to be respectful whenever
I
I'm
can't-
around
I
nature.
can't. No.
You never know
I know.
what could be watching.
Oh, you're
I
weird.
had just
I'm
gotten
weird.
Oh, that's creepy. I called X-Files on her.
Navajo Res in
I'm
Arizona
creepy.
one night heading to New Mexico. I'm
Ring
looking for a
finger.
gas station, not a car on the secluded highway. It being too dark, and I somehow took a wrong turn onto a dirt
Yeah.
road. It
When
was
you put
because of my lack
all
of
your
sleep.
hands,
The sign
when you
read,
put all your fingers
Ganado.
down flat,
Still
and try to
driving,
move
trying to
this
make
one,
sense of my direction.
you can't move
I
it.
ended up at this garbage dump
I
site.
can move with you because
I
you're up
was
in the air,
completely
but
lost
putting
in
it
some
on the
Sorry,
table.
I did.
Just pitch black darkness
Yeah,
with the
my
only light of the
table,
moon
put the
and some
fucking
wisps
grill
of
on there.
clouds covering the small
Put
part
the
of
grill,
it.
put your
Miles
hand
of
down your
bushes,
man.
some small
Go ahead.
trees, and a cornfield. The dump
I
site
can't
was a
get out
large
the
area.
goddamn table.
Piles of garbage were stacked.
Jerry, get
Three
scissors.
scattered the road
Go
and
around the
bushes.
car.
Deciding that I
Carmen.
needed to figure out where I
what-
was,
what
I
did I
stopped
do?
my car and put it in
What?
What did
Oh
my
my
AC was
God.
on. The smell of decaying flesh hit my nose like a baseball bat to the
I
face.
did a piece of white
Gagging,
God.
I turned off the
Your
AC,
finger.
ready to look at my phone for
Oh
Google
my God, I'll
Maps.
fucking
The
die.
smell was foul,
Holy
but I needed
jeez.
to get on the right track.
I can see you send
My headlights had
the
illuminated
pictures
the
too.
area, so I could see
I
most
see
of
you
the
send me
piles.
pictures.
Then
Look,
I
look.
noticed something
Look at the
was
chicken
just
up in
near
the
the
hand
pile.
and one piece of
There was a
cloth.
small coyote digging through the trash. I could see it clearly with my
Well,
bright
maybe
headlights.
in the end and
But
the
the weird
ass.
thing was, I
Oh
realized
my
it wasn't
God.
a small coyote.
Oh
It
no,
looked like
yeah.
a small build figure of a
White
kid.
Yeah,
The kid stood up quickly and looked at me.
Oh.
I could clearly see his face and what he wore. Swearing out loud, I could see that he was covered in black paint
Yeah,
with a fur pelt wrapped around him.
when
That
you
looked
was a
like it had
white
been
yes, you
recently
read
skinned. I noticed that it was the pelt of a small coyote. For a few seconds, everything registered in my brain. There
tell
in
you
front of
what.
me stood a little
Oh,
boy,
this
about
was all
12 years
between
old,
lights
covered in
and
black
that-
paint,
and that.
wrapped in a small
Well,
coyote
enough
pelt,
here, sir, for
digging
fuck's
through the
sake,
trash
mix
looking
up
for
all this
something.
whole living
And
room
now he
kitchen.
had stopped what he was doing,
No, the only
standing
thing
there,
is,
looking
I
at
think
me.
it's you got a
I
dark
let out a
spot
yelp,
going
and the boy
there.
looked to my left.
You see,
And as my head turned, nearly
see
causing
from
myself
here.
whiplash,
Yeah.
there
I
stood
saw him
another,
all, so
much larger figure in the brush.
it's
There
probably
stood a
not
tall,
rated,
heavy-built man,
LED lights
covered
is
from head to
strict.
toe in
and
paint.
see, I don't think
The
you have what I
parent.
got.
Also
I gotta
wearing a
plug it in
larger,
my
thin
oven.
pelt of a
Yeah.
coyote. He stood
Yeah,
there
I
staring
think
at me,
I do.
his face
It was
covered
on
in
the
red
back.
and black face paint.
Okay.
Shoulder-length, messy black hair hung limply down by his shoulders.
Mine's on
He
front,
wore a
you just
huge
plug it
quantity
in,
of turquoise
you got the light.
necklaces, a silver
Your light is
concho
gone,
belt around
like
his
you said
waist,
to me,
and silver
go
bracelets
Walmart
that
and
shine from
buy
both
one,
my
buy
headlights and
one
the moon.
There.
It looked like it was teaching the little boy, his son, something at night. I could see his face from a distance. A stern, mean face. His eyes weren't normal. They were black, soulless, and beady-looking.
Who is
They were
normal
looking
in
into
this
my
fucking
soul.
day?
Then he smiled from ear to ear. I saw his sharp teeth.
Uh-huh.
What the hell? Again, I screamed bloody murder as he ran at my car. My foot above the gas, I made the decision not to try to run him over for fear of having my window busted and being dragged out into the bush. Screaming, my heartbeat hammering against my chest and trying not to have a heart attack. Still gagging at the smell that worsened. I put the car in reverse, stepping on the gas, nearly running off the road as he ran towards me. As I was making a U-turn, I heard the sound of what I know were his nails scratching the back of my car. I put the car in drive. My throat hurt from screaming, but that was all I could do as I looked into my rearview mirrors to see him sprinting down the road, catching up to me. 54 miles an hour on the dirt road, then onto the highway, another 70 to 80 miles per hour, hoping I wouldn't crash. Driving like a madman, fully awake, my thoughts were racing, trying to make sense of what I saw. I made it back on Interstate 40 and kept driving, too afraid to stop, making it to New Mexico in record time. I kept my story to myself because of the backlash my friends and family would probably give me. So, this is a true cautionary tale to those late-night travelers. You may or may not see anything during the dead hours on secluded reservation roads. Just be careful what roads you take.
Like my pajamas.
Never having lived by myself
That's
before,
my pajamas.
I was pretty scared about what to expect. I graduated college and landed a pretty decent job with a generous starting salary, but the downside was that I had to move far away from where I was currently living with my parents. It's been about 3.5 weeks since I moved out, and I've been getting along pretty well by myself. Even in college, I had a roommate and was only 30 minutes away from my parents' house. Now, I'm living alone 2 states away from my family, so I think that I took the sudden change pretty well. I don't know if it's because of the recent stress about moving and everything, but I've been having the same reoccurring nightmare for the past couple of weeks. I'll wake up in the middle of the night covered in sweat, heart pounding, not remembering why I'm so scared, only to have the details of my dream come flooding back to me. Most of the time, I don't even go back to sleep because I'm so scared that I'll dream it again. I don't want to tell my parents about this because they're stressed enough as it is, with me living alone and so far away for the first time in my life. But it's starting to eat me alive. I've gotten very little sleep and it's beginning to show at my new job. I would say that one of the creepiest parts of my reoccurring nightmares is I keep having these out-of-body experiences. I don't know how common out-of-body experiences are, but I think that having one every night for 2 weeks in a row is pretty rare. To understand the rest of my dream, you have to know the general layout of my apartment building and the room where I live. It's a pretty big building, 6 stories tall, and about 100 yards wide. There is a large set of woods located behind the apartment building that stretches on for a good couple of miles. But I've never been back there in real life because the woods give me the creeps. I live on the 3rd floor, and the window in my bedroom has a full view of the woods behind the building.
Yeah,
my dream always starts out the same.
I'm telling you.
I'm standing behind the apartment building, looking into the wall of trees that sits before me. It's in the middle of the night, and the moon is shining overhead, casting a low, white light over everything. I'm standing out in the cold with nothing on but a t-shirt and my underwear. I know I'm dreaming, but there is an astounding amount of detail in what I can remember. I remember feeling the cold grass beneath my uncovered feet, and the rhythmic sound of crickets as they sing in the night. I also remember the woods. Every time my dream starts, I'm looking into the woods, but I have this feeling, call it intuition, that I'm waiting for something. For what? I don't know. Despite all the light that's coming down from the soft glow of the moon, the trees in front of me are dark. They vanish into blackness as they get further and further away from me. After a couple of minutes of standing there in the cold, looking for nothing, I turn around and start walking toward the apartment building. I go up to my room and walk in. The lights are off, but I can navigate through the darkness using the small amounts of moonlight shining through the windows. The door to my bedroom is always cracked open a little bit, so I quietly walk in and there I am. Another me, fast asleep in my bed. I watch myself sleep for a couple minutes and then wake up. Despite the dream not appearing scary in any way, I always wake up full of fear and have to calm myself down by drinking a cold cup of water to steady my nerves. Every time I've woken up so far, I've never dared to look out the window. I'm too afraid that I might see something. See what? I don't know. 13 days now. I've had the exact same dream. 13 days in a row. I'd start out behind the building, shivering in the cold of the night. I watched the woods for a couple of minutes, then walk back into my apartment. I enter my bedroom and watch myself sleep for a little bit. Then I wake up. It's gone on like that for almost 2 weeks. Until last night. It started out the same as every other dream. I was behind the building in the glow of the moonlight, shivering from the cold, standing in front of the dark wall of trees, looking for nothing and listening to the crickets sing. Something was different though. Something inside me had changed. There was an indescribable, overwhelming sense of dread that was not there before. I was afraid. Impossibly afraid. I shivered again, not from the cold, but from fear. For the past 13 days, I had this very strong feeling, call it intuition, that I was standing in front of those woods for a reason. Some part of me was always saying that I was there waiting for something. Standing there last night, I can say with certainty that whatever was waiting for me had arrived. The atmosphere around me felt different. The sort of feeling you get when you know you're not alone. I wanted to turn around and run, but my body wasn't letting me. Out of nowhere, the crickets stopped singing, and everything went silent. I could hear leaves crunching in the distance. I tried to run, but I didn't budge. The crunching leaves grew louder, closer. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. I heard a twig snap several yards in front of me, and I saw something advance from the darkness. I turned around and started walking towards my apartment. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My body wasn't allowing me. I could still hear the crunching leaves behind me, impossibly close. I knew if that I turned around, I would see it, the thing that I've been waiting for. As I was walking back to the apartment, I was certain that something was walking in the darkness behind me, something dangerous and demonic. I made it into the building and walked in, closing the door behind me without turning around. Whatever was following me did not make it into the building. I was about to let out a heavy sigh of relief, but stopped. I heard something behind me. It was very faint, but in the stillness of the night, I could hear it as clear as day. I turned around reluctantly and looked at the door to the outside. There was a long, small window on the door, and through the door, I could see the silhouette of a dark figure standing from just outside the door. The sound that I heard was its claw-like fingers tapping on the glass. It was a mocking gesture. If it wasn't for the lack of light, I would probably seen it smiling at me as well, quietly saying that it was going to get me and there was nothing that I could do about it. The tapping stopped and it moved away from the window into the darkness. I turned back around and went up to the third floor where my apartment was. I entered and walked over to my bedroom door. I quietly walked in and froze. My other self wasn't in the bed this time. I was standing in front of the bedroom window, looking down at the woods below. My other self turned around, looking at me. I don't know if it was because of the lack of light in the room, but I couldn't make out any facial features. My face was just one pale blur of color with 2 specks of blackness for eyes. My other self went back to looking out the window. I slowly walked over to him and looked out the window myself. There was something right on the edge of the tree line looking up at us. It looked like a shadow, a dark outline standing in front of the wall of trees. It turned around and walked into the woods. My other self whispered something to me. It was so quiet, it was like I thought it.
Well, he wants to put a bit of vomit down there.
Get out.
Oh my
Then
God.
I woke up. It was 4 o'clock in the morning and the sun wasn't out yet. I sat up in my bed, my heart still pounding uncontrollably. I looked towards the window but didn't get up. What was I so scared about? I had a stupid nightmare. I've never believed in the supernatural. Why the hell would I start now? I was starting to get angry with myself for being scared by a dream. I got up and went over to the window, out of spite rather than curiosity. I wanted to show myself how stupid I was being. I looked down and scanned the tree line. There was nothing. I scolded myself for acting so childish and was about to look away when I caught something out of the corner of my eye. It was quick, but I thought I saw something retreat back into the woods near the trunk of one of the trees. My heart was pounding again, and I felt lightheaded. I went into the kitchen and turned on the light before pouring myself a cup of water. I sat there in the light until the sun came up.
That's okay.
I called in sick to work and decided that I was going to go apartment hunting instead. As I was leaving the
It was
building,
just
something caught my eye.
Yeah.
I went back to the front door and stared at the small, long window. I put my hand on the glass and moved it back and forth. There were small scratches etched into the glass. I didn't want to sleep in my apartment tonight, so I got a hotel room instead. I still don't want to fall asleep. Whatever is happening,
Well, I got
real or
something
not,
home, or I got
I'm
something here for you
scared.
to fall asleep.
I don't know what to do besides wait. Wait for what? I don't know.
Okay. I just know something.
I know this sounds totally crazy,
Okay,
and I
after
probably
every
wouldn't
night,
believe it if it didn't happen to me. I've never been a believer in the paranormal, but honestly, I have no idea what to make of what happened
I
last
really
night.
want you to do that.
I will say it
Russian,
again
tell
before
me
you
Greek.
read this that it sounds insane,
Charlie,
but
and the
please
other
know
Oh,
I can tell you
yeah.
the truth. I wasn't drunk or
done the
high,
research
and I was with a friend of
after.
mine who saw the exact same thing.
Look.
I go to
That's right,
college
you
in a
know.
smallish school in Wisconsin. One thing this school is known for is having crazy parties out in the woods. I know it
What the
sounds
fu-
stupid, but
Hey,
it's the only way to
it
make
gets-
sure that
before it
campus
gets
PD
hard.
doesn't come and shut
Come
it
on,
down.
okay.
I haven't ever been to one of these parties. I've had difficulty with anxiety, but after 2 years of therapy and
There you
medication,
go. Look.
I finally decided I wanted to go to at least one
Don't be
party
silly,
before I
Rappy
graduate.
Willie.
I'm a senior.
You heard that?
So
that little
anyway, I
thing?
talked to my friend Gina.
Don't be
She's
silly,
known as a bit
Rappy
of a
Willie.
party girl.
Rappy
She tells me
Willie.
there's going to be a big party in the
We should
woods
get every
this
show.
Thursday. A lot of kids at my school don't have class on Friday, so we make plans to go.
Don't be silly.
So last
Rappy
night, me and her
Willie.
head down a trail into the woods with flashlights, and we joke about how creepy
What do
it
we go
was.
hands to like a
Everything
fucking
was going smoothly at first, until we
It's
go
like
down a smaller
a
trail
dustpan.
that was only 2 feet wide instead of the normal road-sized trail we usually go through. I was kind of freaked out, but didn't say anything because I assumed she knew where we were going. So we follow this trail a bit longer, and eventually come to this sort of clearing where the trees aren't too dense and we could see a towel and a few bottles on the ground. At this point, my friend tells me that she's got a bit turned around, but knows that we're very close to the party because she's been at the clearing before. She starts calling out, "Hey," hoping someone would hear her and shout back.
Awesome.
When this doesn't work, she takes out her phone and calls one of her friends that she said was going to meet her at the party.
Is everything
The
good?
friend answers and apparently tells her where they were.
Holy moly.
Gina then tells me she knows where they are and that we're close. I joke that she better not get me killed.
Kristen, is she still on
A sound coming from behind us.
Hey,
followed
Kristen.
by what sounded like a cross
she
between
still
a whistle
on?
of an old train and somebody blowing. We then turn around thinking, what the fuck was that? We shine our flashlights on a deer standing up on its hind legs with one arm
Kristen,
against
you
a tree
still here?
looking at us. I know it sounds stupid,
God,
but just
don't
the way that it was
believe
watching us and standing up there was the most unsettling thing I have ever seen in my life. My friend takes off running, and I'm still standing there looking at it, trying to make heads or tails of it before I start running after Gina, trying not to be left alone with this thing. Luckily for me, Gina runs into a tree and I catch up with her
Oh, it's
and
no
start yelling at
Kristen
her about
Fong is
leaving me
still on
alone.
live.
When we hear another whistling sound, out to
Or
the left
Kevin.
of us and turn our flashlights to see another deer looking at us. But this one was walking toward us on its hind legs, but not like a
that.
person, like a dog. It gets close but walks behind the tree with only its head and neck poking out, watching us. I've never been so scared in my life and start to cry and yell at Gina, telling her to call the cops. Like that would do
That
any
looks
good.
like 2 legs.
At this point, I honestly thought I was going to die. I was just so scared that we had heard another whistle sound somewhere in the woods behind us. We heard a rustling sound in the woods and we were sure that this was it. This is where we were going to die. But instead walked out a giant. I mean giant.
What the fuck?
Like newfound size, but with short hair like a lab. Black dog. The dog then walked right up to us, looked at us for a bit, and looked at the deer behind the tree, which then started to make a sound
Oh,
that we
yeah.
had heard earlier. But the dog just stood
Like
there looking at it,
a
not
duck
growling
deer.
or barking or anything, just staring. The deer then started to make a huge coughing sound, but the dog stared at it without making a noise, before turning around and just ignoring it, and walking over to us and
Well, it
started
says for
barking
full
and
effect.
baying. A minute later, a professor who had taken a class in his sophomore year burst through the brush and started yelling at Baron, his dog, who had apparently run away into the woods. He was really confused to see us, but saw that we were crying and offered to take us back to his house and drove us back to campus. I haven't slept since that night, and I've been all over the internet trying to make sense of what I saw, and I think it was a skinwalker. I know this sounds totally crazy, and I probably wouldn't believe it if it didn't happen to me. I've never been a believer in the paranormal, but honestly, I have no idea what to think of what happened last night. I will say it again before you read this, that it sounds insane, but please know I am telling the truth. I wasn't drunk or high, and I was with a friend of mine who saw the exact same thing. I go to college in a smallish school in Wisconsin. One thing this school is known for is having crazy parties out in the surrounding woods. I know it sounds stupid, but it's the only way to make sure that campus PD doesn't come and shut it down. I haven't ever been to one of these parties. I've had difficulty with anxiety, but after 2 years of therapy and medication, I finally decided I wanted to go to at least one party before I graduate. I'm a senior. So anyway, I talked to my friend Gina, who's known as a bit of a party girl, and she tells me there's going to be a big party in the woods this Thursday. A lot of kids at my school don't have class on Friday, so we make plans to go. So last night, me and her head down a trail into the woods with flashlights, and we joke about how creepy it was. Everything was going smoothly at first, until we go down a smaller trail that was only 2 feet wide instead of the normal road-sized trails that we usually go through. I was kind of freaked out, but didn't say anything because I assumed she knew where we were going. So we follow this trail a bit longer, and eventually come to this sort of clearing where the trees aren't too dense, and you can see a towel and a few bottles on the ground. At this point, my friend tells me that she's got a bit turned around, but knows that we're very close to the party because she's been at the clearing before. She starts calling out, "Hey," hoping someone would hear her and shout back. When this doesn't work, she takes out her phone and calls one of her friends that she said was going to meet her at the party. The friend answers and apparently tells her where they were. Gina then tells me she knows where they are and that we're close. I joke that she better not get me killed, and as we nervously laugh, we hear a sound coming from behind us, followed by what sounded like a cross between a whistle of an old train and somebody blowing. We then turn around thinking, what the fuck was that? We shine our flashlights on a deer standing up on its hind legs with one arm against a tree looking at us. I know it sounds stupid, but just the way that it was watching us and standing up there was the most unsettling thing I have ever seen in my life. My friend takes off running, and I'm still standing there looking at it, trying to make heads or tails of it before I start running after Gina, trying not to be left alone with this thing. Luckily for me, Gina runs into a tree and I catch up with her and start yelling at her about leaving me alone. When we hear another whistling sound out to the left of us and turn our flashlights to see another deer looking at us. But this one was walking toward us on its hind legs, but not like a person, like a dog. It gets close but walks behind the tree with only its head and neck poking out, watching us. I've never been so scared in my life and start to cry and yell at Gina, telling her to call the cops. Like that would do any good. At this point, I honestly thought I was going to die. I was just so scared that we had heard another whistle sound somewhere in the woods behind us. We heard a rustling sound in the woods and we were sure that this was it. This is where we were going to die. But instead walked out a giant. I mean giant. Like newfound size, but with short hair like a lab. Black dog. The dog then walked right up to us, looked at us for a bit, and looked at the deer behind the tree, which then started to make a sound, like we had heard earlier, but the dog just stood there, looking at it, not growling or barking or anything, just staring. The deer then started to make a huge coughing sound, but the dog stared at it without making a noise, before turning around and just ignoring it, and walking over to us and started barking and baying. A minute later, a professor, who had